here. Excellent. Okay, so first thing I want to do is welcome our, we have two new student representatives. From the ARH Student Council, we have Namdal Georgie and Miles Jeffries, and they will be joining us for the remainder of the year to the best of our ability, and we're really excited you guys are here. So, okay, first up is public comment. What I have received there, it is attached to board docs. We have a lot of meeting tonight, so while I do normally let people finish their thought after 3 minutes, I'm going to lay down the hammer today. So if there is someone who would like to come and make public comment, I welcome you to use your 3 minutes very precisely.
Hello. Hello again. I'm Heather Sullivan Flynn. I've been an Amherst resident and a taxpayer in Amherst for over 20 years. And I'm a parent of children who've gone through the ARPS school system, and I'm a teacher at Amherst Regional Middle School and have been for 22 years. Throughout the last 8 or 9 years especially, people in town have asked me why I stay working at ARMS, given the administrative turnover and turmoil. And that turnover and turmoil have been hard. It has resulted in eroded systems and inefficiencies. But the answer, as I indicated when I spoke to you 2 weeks ago, is that I really like middle school kids. The 11 to 12-year-olds right now who are living in Leverett, Shutesbury, Pelham, and Amherst are going to be in 7th grade next year. And they only get to do that once. Next year is their 7th grade year, and I think we really need to think about them. They are the youngest kids in the regional system, and they deserve a strong start to their secondary school years. And the middle school team's structure is that strong start. And that is what keeps me at ARMS too. In order to give those 11 and 12-year-olds that strong start with teams, you have to make cuts furthest away from classrooms. I ask you respectfully, has anyone tried? The other schools in the districts have had long-serving principals who can thoughtfully look at where the inefficiencies and consolidations are or can be made, and they've understood changes that have happened throughout the years. We don't have anyone doing that. We have a different interim principal right now than we did 2 weeks ago. And that is different than the one that we had in the spring, the two that we had in the spring. And I realize that your timeline is short, but I urge you to find who you can speak to see where rescheduling and cuts can be made that have the least impact on students. Please don't let the reason that you cut teams be that nobody looked for a more thoughtful, nuanced consolidation and looked at inefficiencies that impact kids the least. Cutting teams would have the largest impact on next year's 7th graders. Please don't do that to them.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Karen Peters, and for the last decade, I've served as the clinical coordinator for the BRIGHT program here at ARHS. This year, I proudly moved to the middle school to reestablish the BRIGHT program there. In the 10 years I was at ARHS, our BRIGHT program served well over 200 students, and this year at the middle school so far, we have supported 16 students. Students referred to BRIGHT are coping with complicated medical or mental health issues while also navigating adolescence, a tricky business for the most steady of us. Complicated issues like significant family trauma, loss, major depression, debilitating anxiety, panic, recovery after a suicide attempt or self-injury, serious concussions, cancer treatment, or other acute medical issues. These have tremendous impact on our students' academic, family, social, and emotional lives. I've been proud to work in a district that established the first BRIGHT program in Western Mass back when there were only a dozen or so programs, and today there are hundreds of BRIGHT programs in Massachusetts and other states. The BRIGHT program provides these students and their caregivers a home base at school, and like many have called it, a lifeline during a rough stretch. Students over the years have said they likely would have dropped out if they didn't have a place like BRIGHT to support them during these critical times. I was stunned to learn at the last school committee meeting that among the devastating cuts to teacher, para, and other support staff being proposed at the region was also a cut to Bright, proposing that now one clinician would staff and serve both the high school and middle school Bright programs. This is not only logistically near impossible for me to consider, but it would have a devastating impact on the students and families who see Bright as an anchor during a time of crisis. While I have been fortunate to have paraeducators, we call them our academic coordinator, who are highly skilled, compassionate, and dedicated, putting a paraeducator in the position to staff a therapeutic classroom for half the week solo without a clinician would significantly alter what our Bright program could do. The capacity for collaboration with families, therapists, pediatricians, teachers, and other team members would be significantly decreased with a half-time clinical staff member at each school, let alone a lunch break, which I don't think I've taken all year. While I know firsthand we have some incredibly skilled community therapist partners in our Amherst area, wait lists, as you likely know, to see a therapist are often months long. And whether we like it or not, students, like the ones who access Bright, are very often accessing much-needed clinical support in school. Clinical supports that help these students gain the competency, confidence, and the confidence that they need to find their way back to consistent class attendance, engagement, with more skill, regulation, and capacity to take on challenges to move forward in their lives. Oh my gosh, I'm almost done, please.
Not today,
This is
sorry.
the best part.
You can give it to us.
You can
Okay.
email it to us. Thank you. Was there anyone else that wanted to make a concise 3-minute public statement? Okay, great. Oh.
Hi, Irene LaRoche. I am a teacher at the middle school, and I am the APA president. Just want to thank you for wrestling with these very challenging times and being thoughtful. I want to encourage you to have as much information and data as you can as you're making these difficult decisions. We would obviously don't want to see cuts anywhere, but when we're faced with these difficult decisions, we hope that they are made with information and data, and we ask that you ask for that. An example, I think, of some of the more thoughtful decisions and difficult decisions that were handled by some of our administrators at the other schools was not made at the middle school, and I think in part because of our changing leadership and people who do not know the school, don't know the programs, were there at interim basis and perhaps did the best that they could, but did it really without information and without collaboration. And when you're seeking information, you could seek to speak to veteran staff. You could seek to speak with veteran teachers, or ask us what would be helpful for you to understand the context of our daily work. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Dan Miller. I'm a paraprofessional this year at the high school. Last year I was a paraprofessional at the middle school. Just to give you one example, I was assigned one-on-one with 4 kids in one classroom. The classroom was very loud. The kids were seated far apart from each other. I don't know why that was. Except for one kid who sort of decided that he liked me, I was incapable of making any kind of relationship with the kids because they weren't hearing me. I would sit next to them, or I would stand next to them and say something and then have to run it somewhere else. It was difficult. I think it was probably due to a lack of staffing. And I just want to say that my opinion is that it was rough back then. You take out another 5 teachers, it's going to be a building with kids in it and adults in it, but it won't really be a school. It'll just be a situation.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. We did receive voicemails.
Hi, my name is Isaac Furman. I'm a current Amherst resident and a former social work intern in the Bright program at Amherst Regional High School. I'm calling today to strongly advocate that next fiscal year's budget not include any cuts to the Bright program. And I'm saying this based on my firsthand experience being a social work grad student intern in the Bright program back in 2019, and again seeing firsthand just how vital having adequate staffing was to the well-being and reintegration of high school students in the Bright program back into the general high school environment after experiencing prolonged absences due to physical or mental health issues. Having social work interns, having the budget for social work interns, paraprofessionals, in addition to the Bright coordinator, made it possible for us to run groups in the Bright milieu, to offer occasional one-on-one counseling and academic support, to interface with families, outside mental health providers, teachers, again, to give these students who were really disadvantaged and really trying to work their way back into high school, to give them, the support that they desperately needed. So again, this is Isaac Furman strongly advocating that there be no cuts to the Bright program in next fiscal year budget. Feel free to call me back at this number if you have any questions or further comment. Thank you very much. Bye.
Hi, my name is Norm Price. I began teaching at Amherst Junior High School in 1990 and retired from Amherst Middle School in 2023. I'm an Amherst taxpayer and a parent to two children who went through the Amherst schools. When I started in 1990, grade 8 was a junior high school within a junior high school. It was essentially the school model that would result from the cuts proposed by the principal in February. One of the most important jobs of a teacher is to get to know students well. In a junior high school back in the 90s, my understanding of students was severely limited to the 45 minutes I had with them each day. The advisory, interdisciplinary teams, planning time are cornerstones of the middle school. These are cornerstone structures because they increase our understanding of students. For example, during team meeting, we were allowed to share insights among teachers from multiple disciplines that led us to deeply understand our students, and this is still in practice today. Working on team teachers' knowledge of students is exponentially greater over what is possible in the junior high model that's being proposed by the principal in February. By cutting middle school structures, you would be exponentially cutting how much teachers know about students and how well students feel known. Middle school students perform best when they feel known by the adults around them. Middle school structures were brought to the region by visionary admin and school committee. They convinced taxpayers to support schools through tax overrides. It was funded by the town, increasing their taxes, and inspired by admin and school committee taking lead. Over the past 30 years, these middle school structures have been preserved by making intelligent cuts. Losing middle school structures would mean we would be sending our schools back to the 90s. I was there when the middle school sign was put up, and if the towns and admins do not support the middle school structures and make more intelligent cuts at the middle school, which I know are necessary, we will all be there when we take the sign down. I hope you will reconsider the severe middle school cuts and allow the middle school structures to persist well into the future. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Yvonne Seidman, and I'm the art teacher at Wildwood Elementary School. And I'm just calling to remind everyone again of the Audrey's Lord quote, that art is a necessity, not a luxury. And when I say art, I mean all the different kinds of art, from writing to math technology to social emotional learning. Those are all our forms and more. Remember that in this district and all around, to have an equitable education, we need to support everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so next up is the chair's update. Two things I wanted to mention. The negotiations team with the APEA for the 2025-2028 contract met twice last week and the week before, and we have come to tentative agreements in many areas, clarifying the workday and work week for Unit B, finalizing language on work-related injuries, the use of compensatory time for Unit B members, cleaned up language around Unit A duties and assignments, improved the process for the use of the sick leave bank, reviewed the JLMC, Joint Labor Management Committee language and timeline, and relocated several more items for the JLMC to discuss. The team met or set several more meeting dates through the beginning of May and extended our meeting sessions to 5 hours to continue our work together. And we want to take a moment to thank and appreciate the entire team for working together so collaboratively. And then next up, there is Project 211 plus 21, which is advocating for the Joint Ways and Means Committee to address the Chapter 70 funding formula, which there are 232 districts in the state under the hold harmless status. And this, my notes are very jumbled on this. I apologize. And this is the committee that will prioritize the spending of the $1.4 billion Fair Share Act surplus and the state's FY26 budget. I think Shannon, when she speaks, has some more information, because I know they are having a committee meeting March 24th at 11 a.m. at UMass. So they're coming to us. Okay. Are there any?
Can
Yep.
I ask a question about that?
You can.
Do you plan to go? I mean, they're taking testimony, I assume? Or here, is anyone able to go? I am not able to go.
Bridget?
I was invited for the Amherst School Committee by Senator Comerford to come and speak, and so if it's okay with this committee, I'll also advocate on behalf of the region during that testimony.
Awesome. I don't know if I can go yet. Okay. Are there any other school committee announcements or subcommittee updates? Jennifer?
I just wanted to say also that it sounds like Mr. Sadiq is having a school-wide field trip on that day for students to walk to UMass to attend the Joint Ways and Means Committee. So I think that's a fabulous show of solidarity from our students.
Excellent. Anna?
So the subcommittee for superintendent evaluation met, and it has come to our attention that in general, we are supposed to do a mid-year evaluation of the superintendent. And so we would like to do that. The way the mid-year evaluation is run is a little bit different than the annual evaluation. So the mid-year evaluation is not a formal rating of the superintendent. It is an opportunity for the superintendent to come to the school committee to present her progress on her goals. And then after she presents her progress on her goals, then we can have a little bit of a discussion about her progress and how we feel her progress is going. And then if it seems necessary, we can adjust the goals if there's any reason to adjust them.
Excellent.
So I would like to inform the superintendent that this is on the books and schedule a time for that to happen.
We have an agenda item later in the meeting where we can have a full discussion about it.
Okay, I was like,
Yep.
maybe I should have waited for that.
That's all right.
All right, sorry.
Are there any other, Deb?
Hi, just a couple, the group that sponsored the resolution that we wrote and approved both the Amherst and the Regional School Committee in November now has a sponsor for their work. So we have House Committee 4439. And it addresses inequitable charter school funding, and in particular, districts with low to moderate income. Boy, it's gonna be a long night. It requests that the state reimburse districts like ours for the full sending cost of charter school tuitions. So it is one of the very few things that will bring money back into this district. The other one is the Project 211. I've seen different numbers, but I do believe that at least just for the region, because the region is the only rural part of is the rural district, and the Amherst School District is not, that it will bring significant funds back to our schools. So I encourage everybody to take a look at what's going on at the state level. And then locally, the Amherst Town Council meeting met last night. Counselor Anna Devlin-Gauthier requested, at the very end, requested an agenda item for the March 24th Town Council meeting, in which the Town Council would revise their financial guidelines for this fiscal year 26. And she's planning on submitting a memo with some details about that. And Finance Committee is planning on taking a preliminary look at it. She'll be speaking as a guest because she's not on Finance Committee, but she'll be speaking on the 18th at 2. So those are two opportunities for us, our town council, and the community to help us with this very bleak situation we're facing at the moment.
Sarah?
Deb, do you know if there's a Senate sponsor of that?
There is not.
Okay.
It's just a House
So
bill.
far, okay.
Any further updates? I don't have minutes. We don't have a superintendent right now. Tanya, would you like to present the competency determination presentation?
I'd love to.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Yes, I was
Good
gonna
evening.
say, hey, how are you? I'm waiting for it to come up there, and I'll get started. I did send you the draft proposal, but I wanted to make sure, in case we have members of our community that sees this at a later time, that I put together a slide deck so they can actually have some context when they're looking at it and understand what's going on. Thank you. So in November of last year at the election, Massachusetts voters voted to eliminate the MCAS as the high school graduation requirement. It is very important that we just remind everybody, it did not eliminate the MCAS. It removed it as the graduation requirement. We are still legally bound to present, to have the MCAS, as well as to participate in the accountability measures that it comes with, which means we're looking for a 95% participation rate. You can go ahead. Thank you. So what happens now is required by law. School districts are to come up with our competency determination. I'll just refer to it as CD as we go along. And it must show that students have demonstrated mastery in the 3 areas of English, language arts, mathematics, and science. It's important to note that we're talking about the standards covered in these sections. So when we look at ours, we might have specific courses listed, but that's because those are the courses that covers the standards that we're talking about. So as you look at another school's list, it might seem different, but those are the titles that they use. And it's also important to note, number 2, that mastery can be demonstrated through completing coursework. And so the classes they take that align to the standards. Thank you. So the question might be, why are we bringing this to you? It's because in the new law and DESE's guidance, the district will create the CD policy, proposal, and present to the school committee for approval so that it can then be shared with students, families, and district stakeholders. Thank you. And I'm doing this quickly because I know we have a long night. Thank you. So how do students meet CD here in Amherst Regional? First, we'll take a look at the mathematics. It is they're passing one of the set of courses that are listed below. Again, I talk about the standards that are covered, and these standards overlap multiple courses, so that's why you see specifics listed there. It's also important to know that even though you might see algebra and geometry, which are traditionally and historically how we would label it, here we have Math Elective 2H, which covers some algebra standards, and then geometry that covers the others. And that is the same for concepts in algebra and topics 3. Those are specific and unique to us, so we needed to make sure people are clear that those are the courses that cover the standards we're talking about. And then in ELA, there's not that delineation. It's just English 9, 10, 11, 12. But note that you have to pass 2 of those to cover the foundational standards that are across the board with English. And then science, again, specifically to us at the Region High School here, you'll see it's listed as ecology/environmental science and biology because some of those core standards are covered over both of those. And so they pass one of those 3 courses there. Thank you, Megan. It is also important that we know that we might have students that transfer in, and we need to accommodate those students by saying, how do we determine how they meet CD? And that is basically by reviewing the transcript and making sure it aligns with what we have. But also important is to know that we have neurodivergent students, students that are ML learners, and we have to have pathways for success for all of our students. This is not just for most students, this is for all students, and we have to make sure that we have just systems in place to be able to help them and support their learning. So our diverse learners are also on this path for CD for graduation, and that might look more unique or individualized to that particular student if they cannot meet the standard CD pass rate. Thank you. And then finally, like I said, we are a community that have diverse learners, and it is important for us to make sure that we say that in the beginning. And as you look at your proposal, you'll see we talk about that at the front. And it's important for people to know that this is not, even though ours is aligned with most, I think most districts in Western Mass, I wanted to make sure that we called out the fact that we have diverse learners and the need for multiple pathways. So I present that to you, and I'm here to take your questions, and I thank you for the time.
All right.
I guess I really like the idea of having different ways to get to the standards, like portfolios or course menus of course pathways and that type of thing. But there's a concern that arises for me about, like, when you look at the high school data, you'll see that our courses are really segregated a lot. Like, and so when you say diverse learners, I want us to be making sure that we're not creating pathways that enhance that, but instead maybe bring more students and more diverse students into the same classrooms, if that makes sense.
That does. And I'm talking about neurodiversity, not diversity in terms of race or gender or any of those things. It is simply a way to ensure that if they have an IEP or a 504 and have other targeted needs around mathematics, that we accommodate that. That is not so linear that, oh, you didn't take this course, so you can't meet it, that we make sure that we provide a pathway. But I will make sure, do you read it that way when you see it, or?
A little bit.
Okay.
And then there's, I think, what, in terms, one thing that comes to my mind is that I work at UMass. We have plenty of neurodivergent students at UMass. Some people would argue we have entire departments full of them, not naming any names. And, but that, that, for example, I see like one science, but let's align with Mass State colleges, which require 3 sciences and lab sciences for graduation requirements, so that students don't say like, oh, I'm good to graduate, but it leaves them not able to attend a state college, for example.
I understand what you're saying, but for the CD, it's the standards that are covered that when they took the MCAS science test, it's those standards. So this is not graduation requirements.
Okay, so
yes.
all right, great.
Sorry.
All right.
Not graduation requirements. This is the competency determination. So only what MCAS used to cover, and the students had to pass that test to be able to meet CD outside of graduation standards. That's what the CD is covering here. So it replaces the tests that students needed to pass. It's those standards that are covered in the coursework that we're talking about. The graduation standards or the graduation requirements for districts are still as we align them. So, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe you all are who set the policy for graduation requirements.
All right, thanks. No, I got a little confused because the MCAS was revoked, so it wouldn't be a graduation requirement, not like removed completely. So this competency determination isn't for graduation, or is it still required for graduation?
So it is for graduation, but it
we
was
have another layer.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the way that our system works is our state is that competency determination and MCAS are 2 separate things. It's just they used MCAS as the measure for competency determination. And now we're using the measure of coursework for that. And then there is, in addition to that, graduation requirements.
Personally, it feels like they should be aligned, but I see what you're saying.
Yes, so yeah, this part is only for the standards that are covered by the testing that was used to be required through MCAS. But graduation requirements, as set by you all, are a separate but joint thing. When you graduate, you do both, meet your graduation requirements and meet CD, because the vote that happened did not remove CD. It just removed the MCAS as being the measure to meet CD.
Deb?
Yeah, I have said before, I have had the distinct pleasure of administering MCAS for a semester. So my understanding is to get an ARHS graduation diploma, you needed to meet our graduation requirements and pass the MCAS for ELA, math, and science/engineering thing. All this does is give that decision back to us. So while we still have the 96 credits and the blocks of English, and I brought my program of study, that we have well laid out requirements for receiving an ARHS degree, but in addition, there is these competency determination requirements. So it's an and, not an or. But actually, that leads to my question, which is, aside from passing these individual courses, how does this relate to our graduation requirements? I mean, I see the credit requirement and I see course requirement, but that's about all the overlap I see. Am I correct?
Correct, right. The state only requires that CD be met through the standards for those particular 3 that I said, ELA, math, and science.
Yeah.
So that's what the CD covers.
Yeah.
And then there's also, to graduate, the high school graduation requirements. And so I think as you think about it as an and, but think about there are courses and course standards that need to be covered, to be met, that all students can do, that all students are able to access, and most of them were given in either 9th or 10th grade, the testing. So that's where those standards are. And then there's the high school graduation requirements to graduate from the high school that goes with it. And Bridget, I think to cover what you're talking about, they talk about Mass Core, talking about the requirements beyond your high school requirements that I think most of our students probably get to, if I'm not mistaken, from what I've seen. But those are the ones that are required for going to 4-year colleges and those kinds of things.
Sarah?
2 questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So the CD, what is being proposed for CD, can students, we can't require them to pass the MCAS, but you say students still need to take it, or at least we really want them to take it. So if they take it and pass, can they not, we're not requiring it, but if they pass it, then that is a demonstration that they've
No,
attained.
because the law eliminated that possibility.
It said it couldn't be required. It can't even be
That's not the,
used?
that's not the guidance. And if, Megan, will you go back, I think one page, keep going, and one more. So there is a link right there on that page to the FAQs from DESE. So one of the questions was about the MCAS being used to pass the vote, and it says that it cannot. Now, if there are some changes in that, as of this time, it cannot, because of the guidance given by DESE. The vote was to eliminate it, and so the guidance that is given to us is that it cannot be used for that.
Okay. Seems self-defeating. Then my second question about the educational assistance plan. It says, for students for whom all previously outlined modes are not attainable. If that means specifically students with IEPs, 504s, English language learners, can we specify that? Otherwise, a student might say, oh, I can't do those other things. It's not going to work for me, So how about I do this instead, right? It just seems like it could be a way out for students for whom that is not the intent.
All right. Would you mind if I take this back to the groups I've been working with the high school, as well as district curriculum coordinators across the Western Mass area?
Yeah, I mean,
just for clarification and make sure that it's.
If you are really have distinct categories of students in mind, that I think specificity would be.
And I would just say that we did not include specific ones because there might be students who don't actually have an IEP or 504, but might also need those types of supports.
Right.
So
you wouldn't want to limit it.
Right.
Yeah, but you could say, for example.
Okay.
And then that, I think it would make it clear the kind of.
Okay, so not only these, but including.
That's my suggestion.
Thank you.
Anna?
So I have a quick question about science. So the MCAS science portion, it covers all of this or just parts of this? And then for example, if you don't take chemistry or physics, and so then you would have to take ecology, environmental science, and biology?
Yes, so the ecology and biology, that first option, is because there are some standards covered that are covered in biology that are not covered. Well, I should say the opposite way. There are standards covered in ecology that aren't covered in biology, but are required by the standards for the science. So the way the high school does, they split some of those, so students have some of those standards covered in ecology, and the rest of the biology standards covered in the named biology course.
But if you were to fail ecology and biology, but pass chemistry, that would be good enough?
Yes, because each of those covers some of the standards, or the standards it gives you towards what you were looking for to cover the most of the standards in the science portion.
It just doesn't seem to me that if you fail all of your biology, but you pass chemistry and you fail physics, that you would be passing the MCAS science standards, because you would be only passing a third of the standards and not all of the standards, because you would not be passing any of the physics standards and any of the biology standards or any of the material covered under the biology and physics portions, and only the chemistry portions are the stuff that you actually know. So it doesn't seem to me that by only requiring a third of the scientific fields, that should be adequate to meet competency. But maybe I just don't understand the MCAS. So that's totally possible.
So I will just say that when we had the MCAS, it's possible to not pass all the standards and still pass the MCAS. So there is that also. So it's not that you had to make 100%, pass all of the questions on the MCAS in order to pass. So I think that's where, as we talk to the science department, that's where they're thinking. It covers enough to get us to where passing would have been on the testing of the MCAS.
You have clarification?
Yeah, you never had to pass all. You could have passed chemistry, there's an engineering one, or a biology one. You never had to pass all of them.
It's not just a science one.
For the science.
That is the science, yeah.
The science, you had one of 3 options.
We had MCAS.
For MCAS.
So you could choose the science topic that you wanted
Yes,
to take for MCAS.
Yes. They dropped chemistry because chemistry was unpopular for anybody else except our district, but yeah.
I did not know that, thank you.
You're welcome, historical knowledge. I did have 2 questions.
You can be at the end back of the line.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
William.
I just wanted to say thank you
You're welcome.
for presenting this, and I like how you really tried to think about all the students, so I appreciate that, and I appreciate that for the divergent student, or non, I said it wrong, but neurodivergent student. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Sarah Bass, is it important that we vote on this tonight?
Tanya, how
Oh,
important
Tanya,
is it
is
that
it
we vote on this tonight?
So here's the important thing. I did not want this to go so far that families would not know for the class of 2025 what the requirement was. And because of our schedule, I wanted to make sure at least you had time, if there was questions or if you wanted some updates, that you would have time to request those and for us to bring it back. So if you're satisfied with the responses as well as the proposal, then I would say, yes, let's go ahead and vote if possible, so we can let high school know, let students know, and let families know. If there are other things that you would like to see or just some information you want me to get, if we can vote it at the very next time, so that there would not be a rush for families to try to figure out what my child must do in order to graduate. I think it's only respectful of their time.
We can definitely vote at our next meeting if we do not vote tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
We can
Can you
make sure
put me
that.
back at the end of the queue?
Put you,
At the end
Yep.
of the queue, thanks.
Deb,
I had a couple questions just about
was it?
the courses that I think are in the program of studies that aren't covered here. So there's some integrated math programs that aren't, at least they're still in the book. We did transfer, we did, I have a question about a couple of the math programs that used to be more,
Comment?
common in the high school that I believe still are there. So there's a couple of integrated math programs.
Okay.
And in chemistry in particular, I was curious about the chemistry in the community, and does that satisfy this?
So it did not, because it didn't cover enough of the standards.
Okay.
And that's, so specifically around the science and math, the department chairs went through to make sure that the ones we listed covered the standards, because that's the thing. You could say, let's say where I'm from, South Carolina, we just said pass algebra and geometry, because that's the titles of all of ours. What we did was we looked through all of the titles and made sure that it encompassed most of the standards that were listed for the testing. And those are the ones that are listed specifically that do. So there might be other courses, but in totality, they did not cover the amount of standards needed. So that's why they weren't listed.
Okay.
Okay.
Sarah?
Do you anticipate, I mean, high school seniors are already in their final semester, so do you know whether all students will have taken the courses?
For the class
That
of
to-
25?
Yes.
Either they have taken the courses or in the
Or they're
courses?
in the courses.
Yes. The high school, Mickey and Sam did a great job of making sure, as they worked with the teachers and especially our special ed and 504 students, to see how many of them there were. So there might be, the last count, maybe 6 that weren't necessarily in line just yet, but through the education assistance, we think we have a path for them as well.
Okay.
So it was inclusive. It was weeks and actually I think a couple months from the time we met to talk through and make sure that we, like I said, include students that might not be traditionally met by a standard, oh, you have to do these. So we wanted to make sure that all of our students feel seen, feel heard, and have an opportunity and have a pathway to success. And we believe this meets that.
I'm so glad you did that, because I've been worried about how late we're getting to this. So,
And I thank you
So
for
they're all
putting
on
this on
track.
for me.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Jennifer?
I move that we approve the competency determination proposal as presented on March 11th.
I second.
That was you? William?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Sarah?
I did have that outstanding question about clarifying the language about for whom the educational assistance plan is
May I respond?
intended. So I don't know if we can kind of incorporate it without seeing the actual language, if we can incorporate what Tanya has told us about that.
I believe you could make an amendment that you would like it to add parentheses, maybe 504s, IEPs, et cetera. I'm not sure of your policies, but I personally believe that it covers what we needed to. So I would like to stand if it does, but again, I serve at your pleasure, so you tell me what you would like.
Then can I offer that as a friendly amendment?
I actually don't feel the need for the amendment.
I would say, I would agree with you. I don't feel the need for an amendment.
Okay.
But if it doesn't pass, I guess we can amend it.
If it does not pass, we can make a new motion with different information in it. Okay. Jennifer?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
William?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Irv?
Yes.
And Sarah Beth? Yes. We are 8-0 to 1 absent. Passes.
Thank you all so
Thank you
much.
so
I
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you for all the work.
All right. Okay. So next up, we have our calendar discussion. There are 4 calendars listed. I have minimal information. D is the one that. Sure. Yes, please. Yes. Here, come be a person with a microphone.
I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to misspeak,
Oh,
but.
that's fine.
So the way that we did this is we sent all of these calendar options over to the APEA for a vote, as I believe we are required to do so by the contract. There's someone in the audience who can correct me if I'm wrong. The one that we got sent back that was voted on, I believe, is the one that says D 27th without holidays. That is the one that they voted as their preferred option. We sent all of the other options. They were able to review them with their membership, so we wanted to provide them to school committee. But that's the one that was shown most preference for.
Thank you. Jennifer?
I just really quickly looked at all 4 to try to figure out what the variables were. And it looks like the variables are the first day of school, then whether or not 3 Kings Day is a school holiday, which is January 5th, and then that then impacts the last day of school. So it looks to me like D, the one that it sounds like APEA approved, has the first day of school as August 27th. 3 Kings Day is not a holiday, so yes, school on 3 Kings Day. And then the last day of school is June 18th, which is just prior to Juneteenth. And Juneteenth is a Friday, so the last day of school would be Thursday. And if we pushed the last day of school after Juneteenth, then there would be that Friday holiday, and then we'd have school the next week, which I think is awkward. Anyway, I'm editorializing. So it seems like the variables are the first day of school being either August 25th or August 27th, and August 25th is a Monday, August 27th is a Wednesday. So first day of school, August 25th Monday or August 27th Wednesday, and then 3 Kings Day holiday, yes or no, and then that impacts the last day of school. So I just want to say, I didn't even realize that D was the one that was voted on by APA, but that seems the best to me because it has a later first day of school, August 27th, but then a reasonable last day of school, June 18th, before Juneteenth. And just the last thing is, I took to heart what I believe Tillman said at one of our previous meetings, which was that we are a public school district and we should not have religious holidays as holidays, or we should minimize the number of religious observances that we have as school holidays. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb?
Just to add on, it has, the ones with holidays have Good Friday, Three Kings Day, and Yom Kippur.
Yeah, there's three.
Sarah?
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay. All right.
And I agree with Jennifer and Tillman.
Is there any further discussion about our, Anna?
So, was there any idea to not have school on the 22nd or 23rd and start on the 25th?
Of what month are you talking about?
December. So to start on August 25th, and then instead of having a day of school on Monday, December 22nd, and a half day on the 23rd before winter break, to just take the whole week off. Is that even something that anybody would be interested in? Is it, because if we're talking about starting on the 25th,
So
it's,
start on August 25th, is that what you're saying?
26.
yes,
There is one of them.
as opposed to the 27th.
So there's two calendars listed that say calendar start with 25th.
Yeah. So apparently the one without holidays, and then add 2 days of December, which might lengthen the end date to something similar to one that started on the 27th. Just asking.
Jennifer?
Not to throw a huge wrench in the system, but if people are traveling for winter break, starting winter break Tuesday afternoon is likely to increase absences on the 1st and the 22nd and the 23rd. Just saying.
Namdal.
I think that if we end school really late, I know like a few of my friends, they want to participate in summer programs like after school ends, but they aren't able to because the school ends so late, and because of that we miss out on these like other opportunities. So I think we should end earlier.
Ending earlier. All right, Jennifer.
So to address Anna's question, I know that, the first time we saw various calendar options, there was that extra long winter break where December 19th was our last day of break. And then my understanding is that Dr. Z then went off and had a committee that included various stakeholders to come up with these options now. So I assume, although I don't know, that they did this for a reason. Are we expecting Dr. Z today?
I thought so.
Okay. Okay. So so as I said, I assume that was taken off the table for a reason, possibly to have. I don't know. I assume it was happened for a reason, and I wouldn't want to at this point change something or add something or vote for something that's not one of the options on the table. So, yeah.
We have Ms. LaRoche, or Dr. LaRoche, who was part of the calendar committee, who possibly can shed some insight for us.
Yeah, I think so. There were a lot of different considerations on the committee. So the committee was a pretty large group of folks from the elementary and secondary levels, including at least one administrator, and a lot of the I'm so sorry. What's your name? Doll? Nimdal. Your concerns around like ending the year kind of later was a big piece of it. And then the other concern was there were some folks who had concerns about ending too late in the summer where people can't then transition into and get the buildings ready from like summer program, right? So you're in a summer program and then maybe you're gonna need to get the building ready and then school starting. So it was about thinking about what the outside ends would be. Those bookends were sort of where people were at. And then when you have a certain number of days you have to have school, you end up not with those, you don't have that 2-week holiday. So I,
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Don't go, don't go.
Why?
I had a question.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So, the June 12th workday is odd because, well, it's odd because it's new. Can you, like?
So, yeah.
It makes sense to me, but
Sure.
obviously, can you
there are
explain it?
it's different, you're right, from what we have done. It was about providing time for transition between, closing up 1 year and moving into another.
Yeah.
Hi. Shall I just give the seat over?
Just finish.
I really think that Dr. Z should answer this question, but
Yes.
but it seems like so the professional days were moved, but you'll see that there's one in January between semesters, and then there's the one in June. And other school districts do have those days sometimes.
Thank you. All right. Get this.
Or this one.
For
Tillman, if he's not coming.
We're gonna have to combine all of our stuff piles. Perfect.
This is yours.
Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Zeke?
We are having conversation about the calendar and how the calendar committee worked. And I think the last question was if there was thought given to having December 22nd and 23rd as part of the break. And starting the year earlier, starting it later. I mean,
Just starting it on the 25th as opposed to the 27th, so that was an option. One of the options was starting on the 25th, one of the options was starting on the 27th. And then the other options are with or without extra holidays. And if we're going with the if we go without extra holidays, but we start on the 25th, then we could add 2 more days to the winter break without extending the year too long. But maybe people don't want to do that. I'm just saying.
This, I would say, would be iteration number 36 of the school calendar. We started, I think when we first presented the suggested calendar, we had a much earlier start date with a much later start date. There was a lot of back and forth. There was a committee that came together. There was conversation initially that there wasn't data around the 2-week break and how it worked. And I guess this was the first year. I know most recently, a lot of the superintendents in the area, we've been putting our dates into like a common Excel spreadsheet to look and see how we align. When I plugged in the suggested dates, we were in alignment with the districts that are around us. There could be conversation, but I know we sent out 4 versions to APEA membership with the 25th and the 27th. And then this is one without any holiday. Yes, this is the final one that was received the most popular votes. I think this one also gets us to not come back in after Juneteenth. This one has built in additional caregiver days, especially at the elementary level throughout the year. So there was, for me, there was an opportunity for great compromise. The things that I was looking for in terms of engaging parents more than just at the start of the school year, we were able to get that into the calendar. There was a balance of professional development days, and we took out the religious holidays, which was surprising that this was the one that got the votes, but I also realized this gets us out of the school year a lot earlier, even with the 5 days with snow days.
Bridget?
I think that that the process was really good. It was collaborative. A lot of people came together. There's a lot of things that come about when people pull together and go through that and decide on something. And I think something that we can use right now is more of that. And so my suggestion would be to vote for the one that was voted by the popular vote.
Deb?
Yeah, I just think if you back things up to the if you back up the start date to the 26th from the 27th, that backs the teacher work days up, so they lose a whole week of summer. That backs the teacher work days up to the week before. So I wouldn't be in favor of that without it going back to various discussions.
Yeah, by union days, I think teachers start 2, 3, how many is it? 2 days before the start of school.
And staff starts 1 day.
Right.
Sorry,
Para.
C is, yeah,
1 day before.
and clerical has 10 days.
Yeah.
I will also say, for my house, anecdotally, starting school on a Monday this year was like super rough. Which would be the 25th. Jennifer.
I move that we approve the calendar that starts August 27th, first day of school, August 27th, without holidays, the one called D 27th Start Without Holiday .pdf on Board Docs.
I second.
Second.
Oh, go ahead. Bridget.
Who's taking it?
Bridget's
Bridget?
taking
You did.
Any further discussion? Excellent. Irv.
Yes.
Deb.
Yes.
William.
Yes.
Anna.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Bridget.
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
And Sarah Beth, yes. We are 8-0 to 1 absent. We have a new calendar.
Woo!
Yay.
Woohoo! My first, yay!
All right. So next up is our FY26 fees discussion and vote. Shannon, are you with us? Excellent. Shannon, take it away.
Okay. So I wanted to present potential fee increases for FY26. There were some increases in FY25, but most notably in athletics, our fees have not increased since FY21. So I just will start at the top with college application services. Those, there would be no change. It's really not an additional increase at this time. Our parking fees for the high school, for the full year, we would like to increase by $2, and for the half year by $1. And it's just to help keep up with the cost of inflation. I know it's really minimal, but we could use these funds to help slightly offset things around our parking lot maintenance and things of that sort. Our instrumental rental, we would like to increase by $1. Not anything too crazy there, but just to help keep up the pace with inflation at a slow pace and reasonable. The most notable increases here are to athletics, and we would like to increase those by 5%. And that is, if we haven't increased since FY21, and I showed FY20 versus FY21 on here deliberately because that was a 1% increase. So if we would have kept up pace each year, we would have had a 1% increase. So that's why I'm proposing the 5% here. I will say, if you're unsure, fee 1 is football, basketball, golf, and Nordic skiing. Fee 2 is baseball, cross country, diving, field hockey, track, lacrosse, soccer, softball, swimming, tennis, track, frisbee, and volleyball. And fee 3 is ice hockey and alpine skiing. And that was actually the high school. It's very similar to the middle school. The biggest difference is fee 3 at the middle school is tennis and running. So I would like to propose those increases. I know we've had discussions about our athletics revolvings. While this does not solve our bigger problem, it would certainly be helpful. And since we have not increased since 21, I think it's long overdue. Our school meal lunch prices we would like to increase. It's only by 10 cents. It can only be increased by 10 cents increments per year by law, and we are significantly behind. So I will be requesting to increase that 10 cents every year going forward, because there were many years where we did not increase. Are there any questions?
Anna?
So now I have two questions. The first one is that for the school lunch fee, that's really more about the state and not so much about the actual students paying this, because it's still free lunch? Okay.
Right.
And then the second one.
And just to that point, is at some point, if we ever do charge for lunch, we would want to make sure that our fees have kept up to where they should be.
Yes. And then the second question is about the sports fees. I would like to see a greater increase in the full fee schedule, or an added schedule for increased fee schedule, and then a reduction in reduced fees. So what I've been hearing is that there are still some families who struggle to pay the athletic fees. There are clearly families who do not struggle to pay these athletic fees. And if we ask some of those families to pay not just what would be our break-even amount, but to pay 10% more or some percentage more to then more fully subsidize families who cannot afford some of these fees, I think if there's a tier that is, a 10% increase, and then the tier that is the 5% increase, and then these other two reduced fees, or then we could take those reduced fees and reduce them even further to sort of compensate for that. And I would just like to see a little bit broader spread so that the people who can most afford it actually pay a little bit more instead of just paying enough.
William?
Yeah, I have a question about the parking fees. Do we know how many stickers are sold?
I do not know that off the top of my head, but I can certainly find out, and it sounds like I'll be doing revision, so I can bring it to the next.
Because I would suggest that we increase that more. So I'm looking at it as sports, I think, is a more equitable, I think more families from all different socioeconomic backgrounds are participating in sports. You're asking families that have the ability to buy a car for their child to park in a parking space. That increase should be more than what we're asking families to pay to be involved in a sport. I also think that we are not charging families to park in our parking lot.
I was going to jump in and say that we need to confirm that everyone who is parking is paying.
I can tell you they're not, because I can speak for myself.
I don't think anybody pays for a parking sticker in my house either.
So I'm just going to say that.
They laughed at me.
I don't know if there's even a mechanism to do that necessarily. And I know that a lot of schools also allow the seniors to paint a parking space. So why not charge $300 to those families that want to paint a parking space? I don't know. I just think it kind of bothers me that we are not increasing the luxury of having a car and being able to park it at the high school, but we're increasing the sports at a higher percent.
Sarah?
I have a bunch of questions. So first of all, the full athletic fees, the full fee, do we know that, in fact, those are just covering the cost? Or are they already paying, are those in excess of the actual cost of the program? Or do you not know? Or how did word these numbers seem to go way back in time. Do we know how they were first developed?
Yeah. So one of the things we had posed athletics during we've been meeting with the athletic director is to be able to track the expenses by sport, which is that's not something that was tracked previously, and it's also difficult and challenging to do that. Um, but that so that has not been done. But we're hoping that starting for the spring sports, or was it the winter sports? I don't remember at this point, that tracking process would be done so that we could truly identify. The problem, I don't know that it's really a problem, but it some sports, the people that students that participate in certain sports that may cost more end up also being students that cannot pay those full fees, and so there are bound to be a sport that costs more, but we don't bring in enough fees because they can't pay that amount. So evidently it ends up with some other sports ultimately subsidizing in some fashion other sports. So there's also a question of is is that something that we want to dig in more, and I would say no.
I'm sorry,
I,
no to what?
it could cause an inequity an inequity in uh, if one sport has a lot more students that they cannot afford to pay, but it's also a sport that is more expensive, what do we do about that? Like I don't I think there's only so much digging we want to do to make it fair so that these students can participate.
Okay. Another question was about the musical instrument rental. Why do we not offer reduced fees for that? I would advocate for that. It's not, music is just as important to some students as sports are to other students, or maybe even the same student. And I know they're not large fees, but still, I would advocate for at least one reduced tier. And then my last comment is about the late registration processing fee. Is that really a thing, or is this a junk fee we are charging?
Well, it's a fee. A thing
Shannon, I
according
could jump
here.
in on that one.
Has it been enacted? I'm
Shannon,
not
she
entirely
can read.
sure.
Shannon, give me 1 minute. So I think that I'm going to say across the board, we have not been good with fees. We are working to clean that up. And so I wouldn't call anything a junk fee. What I would say is there are some fees that we have not been collecting, including the sports fees, but we are working to kind of fill the gaps by fixing the process. So it's one that I think that may not have been enforced, but we will be enforcing.
The late registration fee?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just curious about what is the cost? Why is there a cost to registering late?
So I think it becomes a shift, especially in what occurs, the cost and pricing. There's like registration fees for some of these sports that go up to the state level, or different things that go to different areas. And when you have additional students who come in after you've already submitted your numbers, after you've already paid, you too incur a cost.
You do, okay.
So we're just trying to say that we're accounting for everything.
Okay, so that's really a cost.
And if we analyze it this upcoming year and we notice that it's one that we don't need to pay, we can, when we come back next year, we can say we are now removing it because it's actually one that we've gotten ahead of by submitting on time.
Thank you.
Irv.
Yes, Shannon, are there subsidies in place for the fee one, tier one, I guess it is? And if so, what are those subsidies?
What do you mean by that? Like the reduced fee 1 and reduced fee 2?
Right, I mean, in other words, and the athletic fee for, I guess it'd be fee one, that would include football, basketball, etc. Are there any current subsidies in place? In other words, are there subsidies in place that would be able to have a person who could not afford to pay still be able to participate?
Irv, that's what reduced 1 and reduced 2 are. Underneath.
Yes, but I think so if somebody couldn't pay reduced 1 or reduced 2, what do we do? Are they still able to participate? Is that what you're asking?
That's correct.
Okay. then there is a process for that, which is a really simple process. Is they speak to the athletic director, and depending on the circumstances, I don't think it's too deep. But if somebody cannot pay at all, the athletic director would approve for them to be able to participate.
Um, and so that would be a one-to-one conversation?
Yes.
The other thing is just an overall statement. I do note that those particular sports that I just mentioned usually include a large number of kids who are low income, people of color, etc. And I really would not like to see any of those kids eliminated because of their inability to pay.
Yep, and I think I don't know if it's advertised anywhere, but I do know parents reach out to Victoria, the athletic director, if they have an inability to pay, and take it on a case by case circumstance, and they are still able to participate.
I'm pretty sure, Irv, on all of the registrations for kids sports, it says contact the athletic director here or something along those lines.
Yeah, I understand. I just needed to have that question clarified for everyone in the audience because it is of deep concern to me.
I think we should also start encouraging the community members to donate and sponsor a sport or sponsor a child and probably pay a fee, because there are some individuals who feel as strongly as you do, Irv, who may be able to support couple athletes, our students in the most marginalized groups, and sponsor their fees. We do ask, I think that was Anna's question earlier about the additional 10%, but there are a lot of times when community members ask how to donate, and paying a fee for one child to play a sport helps to shift a child's life. So that's a message that I hope that we could also promote in terms of not just looking at collecting the fees from families, but how can other families or community members and stakeholders support our students?
I really applaud that, Dr. Z, and I think that that should be more universally transmitted to not only the audience, but also the school population and others in the community, that there are pathways for them to donate to the athletic fund to support students who may possibly not have the resources to participate.
Thank you, Irv. Deb.
Hi, Shannon. Sorry. I know that when we went to universal free meals at the state level, the impetus for families to apply for free lunch went down because there was no need to it, and that's great. I support it entirely. But one of the things I've heard in the course of these conversations, I mean, and those applications are ponderous. Has there been a change in that ability for, is that how we assess reduced fees? And if it is there an alternative method beyond talking directly to the athletic director to access those reduced fees?
So I think if somebody has to pay a reduced fee, they would need to have some communication. I know the reduced lunch, I just want to say this, the reduced lunch, I know students or parents have not filled that out as much because of the change. As a backup to that, I know that IT does a direct certification of low income every year that could also be used instead of the reduced lunch fee. But I don't know that there's any other way around it without a conversation with the athletic director if they're not able to pay.
Okay.
Jennifer?
In total, not sport by sport, but in total, do the athletic fees cover the athletics program, or like to what extent in total do the athletic fees cover the athletics program? If that's even a question you can answer.
So at one point they did. We had more revenue than expenses. And when I look at the revolving fund over the past few years, our expenses have increased and our revenue sources have decreased. most notably, we've had a balance that we were able to carry forward each year for athletics to support it. The revenue for projections for FY25 on that athletic fund were way over projected if you look into that budget book. And it's unfortunate. And that's what has put us in the position where the revolving fund is over. And we are managing that every month. I follow up and I have contacted the athletic director, and we're working towards that. And so and same with what we did for our FY26 budget to try to be better for that revenue projection and those expenses, and taking averages of the revenue that we brought in for the last 5 years to help determine that. So at one point it did, now it's not, but we are working on reaching out to parents and following up to ensure if somebody hasn't paid that they do, but we also don't want to be aggressive. If a parent can't do it, we don't want them to not participate too. So there's a really fine line there, but we are working on it at this point. So.
Thanks, sorry. I'm in favor of Anna's idea of having like a full plus tier. I think that's what you're saying for families who can afford to do that. As well as Dr. Z has your idea, or I don't know if this is even a thing is there a pathway to allow someone to sponsor an athlete? Like, is that something we can put into place so that people can do that if they want to? And I just have a comment about parking, which is that I asked last year, is there parking enforcement? Like, if you look at the parking lot, so first of all, we don't charge staff to park, right? Which we shouldn't. We shouldn't make people pay to come to work. So if you look at a car in the parking lot, how do you know if it's a teacher or a student? And the answer I got was like, oh, teachers park closer to the building and students. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. So like, so as the point has been made, how do we have parking enforcement? I'm not saying like we should make more work for someone, but if we have this fee and we're charging it, is there a way to, I don't know, to do that, to make sure students are paying to park if we have this fee?
We will work with the school leadership to enforce it, and we also may need to limit the number of cars. I think last week we received a complaint from the bus company and from the buses, our transportation unit and the bus company, that they couldn't turn into the parking lot, and they may end up damaging some vehicles. So I would suggest for parents and community members who have their children driving to school, if they are parked in a area that is not a parking space, and they get hit by a school bus, and the car gets damaged, please do not seek coverage from the school. As you know, we are in a budgetary situation as it is. So I would definitely suggest, and that's something we'll work with the school leadership to outline and to clearly put protocols in place.
Anna.
Now I remember. So I think I had one comment about the athletic fees, in that I'm actually not seeing exactly how to make a plus tier, because it would require income information, and that asking families to submit income to prove that they're more well off is going to be almost
Optional, full plus.
See, this is the problem. Very, very few people are going to opt in to pay more.
I thought that's what
What-
you were saying.
No. What I want is a tier that is required of people, that is more than what is break even for the sport, so that families who can afford it can pay a little more than what would fully cover it, so that families who can't afford it can pay even less to participate. It doesn't work as well to be like, I volunteer to pay one student and a half, because the number of families who actually volunteer to do that is so small. It's so small. And there are families, thank you very much, who do that. But making it an opt-out instead of an opt-in would be more successful. So there's that. The other thing is, I do realize that hockey is a very expensive sport to play, in large part because of the ice time. And I feel like we have not worked with Amherst College hard enough to get that ice time for free. and this is the kind of thing that Amherst College seems more than willing to do. They have a very generous idea about in-kind services, and this is directly, you know, use our ice rink when we are not using it kind of support for them. And they have not been asked.
Victoria works very closely with the different colleges and universities, and use their rink, their
It's
get
totally
reduced
free right now?
costs.
And it's not free.
I can't tell you which, because they also use UMass, so I'm not sure which one they pay for from which one they don't. She would have to clarify for me, but I do know that she reaches out for different, I mean, even equipment. Like she really does.
Okay, but this is the kind of thing where I think we need to push a little harder, because it's the kind of thing that doesn't really cost the universities, or, you know, Amherst or UMass, very much money to provide us. Yes, it's a, you know, they can't rent it out when we're using it, but at the same time, like, it's the kind of thing that we should be pushing for a little bit more, when they're not paying taxes, and they should allow us to use these. It's not even that many hours, honestly. So I don't know if there's, besides ice hockey, I think, you know, Berkshire East, I don't know, maybe we
Diving,
can get them to
swimming
donate
pool.
more, but that's like, yeah. So, you know, I think there's, when we're using other people's facilities, I think there's ways to try to leverage that. But, you know, using the boosters and asking, you know, maybe suggesting a scholarship fund designation within the boosters organization to help fund the revolving fund. There are definitely ideas, and we don't want to put it all on the boosters, but I think the opt-out of extra funding is, you know, all kinds of economic studies show that this is much more successful than the opt-in. Nobody opts in, very few people opt out.
Bridget?
Well, the first thing I want to say is I really don't like the idea of putting on an individual child whose family doesn't have enough money to participate, to then also have the self-advocacy on top, or have the parental capacity on top, to go and individually seek out the athletic director. To, like, it's just one barrier on top of another barrier. And I don't think that that's an equitable way to approach it. I want to put, like, some real numbers with it. If you're talking about the lowest level of free and reduced lunch, those are families, it can range, but, like, just to hit it, you're, like, looking at $18,000 a year, when we know we have people in our community easily making 10 times that. So I guess I disagree with Anna's idea that we shouldn't ask people their income information, because we already do if we're asking them about free and reduced lunch. Why should there be one standard for people at a certain income and another standard at people at a lower? I feel like that first tier and maybe the first two tiers should be free, but then people who have the means should pay. And I also think on the parking lot, if you have a teenager, like many of us do, who you've already bought a car that's $20,000, and now you're paying the insurance on that vehicle and everything else, asking $500 to park the car is just a drop in the bucket next to everything else. And some of us might have liked to say, well, earn that money, then you can drive to school. So then you're not putting your kid in the car every day with other kids, and, you know. And one final little thing, I think that we should price the lunches well enough that if the USDA money or the money gets pulled back federally, that we can fund that we can pay for lunches.
So, to that, we can only increase in 10-cent increments for those. So, and we're behind. So every year we'll be asking for a 10-cent increase to try to catch up.
Sorry. Deb.
I'm one of these families who sends their kid to school in a car for no good reason, and it's convenient. But there are families whose children have after-school jobs, and that's part of their economic self-sufficiency. So if we're talking about, and there's some kids who buy their own cars, and some kids who probably don't insure them. But anyway, I just feel like, yeah, there's a lot of us that could pay more, but let's not overlook the burden that that might place on somebody who might not have the self-advocacy to say, hey, you know, that's not something that's gonna work for my family, so. And then just 3 or 4 years ago, the athletic trainer was moved on to revolving funds. So one of the reasons, not the entire reason, that fund is more stressed than it used to be is because it's paying for a modest salary. So I think we can add that into the conversation. That's it. Thank you.
William?
A couple things. Speaking on the raising the athletic fee, full fee more for our, not making it to where it's an option to pay extra, but have the first one pay extra. I would assume, and I'm going to ask this question, that do we really know what the break-even cost is for any of the sports?
No.
So we're just arbitrarily already picking these numbers out of thin air when we decide what the full price is.
Yeah.
So to other people's concerns about raising it above what it actually costs, we don't know what it actually costs. I can tell you from my own personal family's experience, my daughter did diving for the first time in many years. They had a diving team last year, no coach. This year they had a coach. We paid the same fee. There's no way that no coach versus a coach would have been the same fee. So I'm just saying, I don't think we really know how much it costs. I'm not saying we need to know how much it costs, but I would be in favor of raising the fees out at that top tier, not at the other tiers, because I do want to make sure it's equitable.
So I do want to just say, to my knowledge and in talking with the athletic director, which I believe we started working at the district at around the same time, we have not seen that it was tracked by sport. But that's not to say that the original costs for how these started to develop were not figured out that way and that we've built on top of it. So I don't want to say that that's something that's never been done and that we've been willy-nilly the whole time. And that's something that we did ask for them to do so that we can help see what sports are sports that cost more and how much are we bringing in, vice versa. And I have a sort of an idea of that, but we really need the data.
So I want to clarify, I would never say anything was willy-nilly. I just think that we don't know what those costs are, so I think we could add more to the top tier. That's all I was trying to say. I'm not saying that there wasn't work done. I don't see in this, this is supposed to be for all the fees. So where are the fees for renting rooms? Where are the fees for renting pools? Where are the fees for renting the basketball courts? Do we have any, is that a separate fee schedule? Or I thought that some of that used to be included in what we passed in years past.
So we need to come back and present to the committee. We are adopting a new system that's going to help us with our facilities rental. A part of that contract with that individual is to come in and take pictures and help us assess our space. And so we wanted to present that to the committee with suggested fee schedules for the use of our regional facilities. So that would be a separate presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer?
I withdraw.
Okie dokie. Tillman?
I just want to note that large increase in the parking fee will disproportionately hit the students from the regional towns because if they participate in athletics or such, there's no transportation home, and so they are more likely to rely on their own car, and none of them live within walking distance. I'm pleased to see that the fees seem to cover the cost of athletics this year, according to the budget book. I have two questions about that. How is it possible that we can reduce transportation from 81,000 to 1,990 and operate athletics correctly? And what happened with the it's listed here as 47,599 balance on the, there's a negative balance on the fund. That seems to have been canceled out for the next year.
So we moved the athletic trainer onto the operating budget, and the transportation portion of that will be funded from the Amherst College funds. And otherwise, without doing something of this sort, we would have had to do some sort of reduction that we are not prepared to do.
Okay, but so, may I follow up? So that means the costs are still there, they're just using different funds? And so
Correct.
that level of subsidy for athletics is still there, it just doesn't show on the book?
It doesn't show under the revolving section.
Thank you.
Anna?
So, in line with Tillman and some of the other comments about cars, I think I am in favor of increasing parking fees where it's possible, because people who can afford to drive cars can probably afford to pay higher parking fees. But it does additionally hit the hill towns a little bit, the regional towns a little bit more. And for students who choice in, it's going to really hurt them because they probably have no other option. Either their parent is driving them all the way in, or they are driving themselves in, and they don't have a bus option. And so we're going to ask them to drive their car in and pay to park it. And so that seems a little less fair, although they are choosing to do it. So, you know, there is that. So there's a lot of considerations to think about parking fees and how to fairly charge for parking, but I do think that, raising parking by $1 or $2 is probably very conservative and could probably be raised more than $1 or $2. And, if you wanted to provide a reduced parking rate for students who have exceptional circumstances, who need to drive and do so because they and they can't afford to pay for the parking, but they need to drive to go to work or whatever, there could be exceptions, but I think that I would be in favor of raising the parking fee.
Just
And
there is
to,
reduced.
to that, Anna, there is a 50% reduction.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any further fees discussion? Sounds like we'll probably have to talk about it next week too, or in 2 weeks. Okay. Financial Sustainability Subcommittee recommendation.
Great, could, Megan, can you post the memo and that's attached? So this is regarding the budget discussion, which is coming next. Sarah Best put this, recommendation before our budget discussion. So the Fiscal Sustainability Subcommittee, which is Bridget, Deb, and myself, met, and we have a proposal, a recommendation, a suggestion for the Regional School Committee regarding the budget. So basically, our suggestion is that the Regional Subcommittee approve or instruct the superintendent to develop a 7% budget. So a level services budget would require a 10% increase. And the last time we formally heard from the 4 towns, that resulted in a 4% budget, which was reflected by the $1.39 million in cuts that we saw at our last meeting. So we're proposing a budget that splits the difference, so a 7% increase over fiscal '25, and that would cut the amount of deficit in half from 1.39 million to 696,000. And that could restore most of the student-facing positions. So we pulled out what we believe are the student-facing positions from the list of budget cuts. So this is something for the Regional School Committee, for us all to deliberate on and discuss. The FSS acknowledges this is not an easy decision, and even if we approve it as a committee, it still needs to be approved by the 4 towns. Sorry this is so small, but in the colored table on the bottom, we've shown a couple of options. So the yellow column is the level services budget. So if we had a level services budget, at the bottom is the total, that would be a 10% increase. The green is the last time the 4 towns met, we they aligned on a 4% increase. Again, that's the bottom line. And then the blue and the purple, the blue is a proposed 7% budget with the modified statutory method. So it results in an increase for Amherst of 5.3%, Pelham at 23.5%, Leverett at 14.6%, Shutesbury at 8.2%, a total increase of 7%. I see. Sorry, I see Tillman is shaking his head off. I know it's not going to be easy, and no one's going to like it, but this is where we are. And then and the purple is just slightly modified. The percentages. So for the purple is the bottom line for the purple and blue are the similar 7%, but just we slightly modified the percent increases to bump Amherst up a little bit more to 5.6, and then you'll see the percent increases for the other three towns mimics what you'll see later that the Shannon or the superintendent are going to present for. It seems like they have a proposal as well, but regardless, the blue and purple would cut in half the cuts required. And I just wanted to, so this is what the FSS suggests or recommends. Obviously, the committee's going to discuss, and the superintendent and Shannon may present other numbers as well. But I just wanted to share a small story that I haven't heard anyone else share regarding the middle school and the core teachers. So I have a 10th grader this year. She started 7th grade at ARMS. That was the first year we came back from online school. So she was like coming back to online school. She was in 7th grade. Middle school was tough, but she had a great group of core teachers. Many of them are in this room. And when she graduated 8th grade, or when she had the moving on ceremony from 8th grade, she had been at ARMS for 2 years. She had the same group of teachers for 2 years because they have the team looping model. And the 8th grade graduation ceremony was so moving in that every kid got an award, not an individual award because that would have taken forever. But what the teams did was they grouped students in 5 to 10 groups of kids, and each group of student got like a themed award. It was like empathy or bravery and civic mindedness. Each group of kids got a themed award, and you could just tell how well the teachers knew the students. I'm looking at Miss SF and Dr. LaRoche and Mr. Hunter, who I'm sure are deeply involved in that. You could just tell how well the teachers knew the students because they had that looping, and they had advisory, and they had team meetings. Middle school is hard enough as it is. And our middle school is hard enough as it is to do away with that, with the team model and the looping and the advisory and the team meetings. I could not possibly approve a budget that makes that cut at the middle school. If anyone else on the FSS wants to say a few words, that's all we have to say.
Any discussion on the FSS? Bridget?
I would just say that when we looked at it and tried to stay with the principles that we put forward as a committee last year and saw what that would look like, we come up with the 7%. Personally, I don't know about the bottom color-coded stuff. I think that's all still got to be worked on. And I think we can, I think we are going, and we're going to try to ask Amherst for more as well, so that some of those other numbers aren't as big. But I think if we want to have the schools that we can feel good about sending students into, we absolutely cannot make those cuts at the middle school. Someone said at the last meeting that in 2005 there were 35 core teachers there, and with this cut there'd be, I forget if it's 12 or 15, but it's just such a dramatic difference in the number who would be there supporting our students. And I also have a student who came through the middle school, 6 years ago now for 7th grade. And when they were at home during the pandemic, and the folks that they already had those connections with were online, it was like the day changed, because they were like, oh, Miss So-and-so is going to have me build something from the 3rd story here of the house and build, engineering Rube Goldberg machine, basically, across the place. And the way that those teachers knew how to tell the individual students things that got them up from the screen and doing things and then coming back, and the interactions were just so robust. I cannot see 20, and at that time my son had about 16 students, 18 students max in the class, and now we're talking 23 or 24. I think it's just a really big difference.
Irv?
Yeah, I really fully support the Sustainability Committee recommendation. And I hope that the school committee takes it seriously and that this ends up in a motion that we vote on. I also, however, believe that even if we adopt this recommendation, which I hope we do, we will face the same issues next year and the year after unless we fundamentally change how we account for controllable cost. We cannot continually rely on others to do what we can do for ourselves, and we should examine that very carefully. By ourselves, I mean the school committee, unions, towns, and all other related entities. We need to closely examine these budget sections and make tough decisions that will impact our future choices. We must stop relying on others to manage our finances. It is not right, just, or fair to continuously ask the town to fund our deficits without making shared sacrifices. Some may argue that we have already made sacrifices, but have we really? If we continue down this path, the only students remaining will be those who cannot afford to go elsewhere, primarily low-income students. I propose forming a task force consisting mainly of school-related individuals, 4 town representatives, and independent experts. This task force will resemble the one previously proposed by the town manager. The goals and objectives of this task force will be to examine all areas of the budget and develop actionable items to guide our future budget decisions. We cannot continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. Thank you.
Tillman?
I was going to comment. My main comment is on the budget agenda item, but since I had a visible reaction, I apologize to the presentation. I just want to explain that what I will say then is that Leverett is committed to increasing by 6.5%, which is close to the green. I can't tell colors, blue and purple here. So I think we're aligned in the desire to support the schools, but I will explain that the numbers that are listed here, the percent increases that are listed here for Leverett specifically, are not feasible.
Deb?
I have a middle school story too. It's just really short. My middle child is my verbal child. She's my writer. She's my dreamer. And it wasn't until she got to middle school that I know that she has the potential of being a scientist. And that was huge. I mean, she grew up in a family of scientists and never tapped it until she went to middle school. And I don't want to deprive that beyond my own personal experience. I just can't see doing anything to that school right now until it's stable, and we haven't had stability for years. And so, and we know the consequences of that instability, and I just want to protect those kids and that bubble as much as we possibly can. So I just can't see using the guidance of somebody who doesn't have that kind of tenure in our school system to make this kind of fundamental programmatic, drastic change for such a vulnerable school, for vulnerable kids who are particularly vulnerable. Just no. So that's where I stand on that. I just can't do it. Beyond that, I realize that the SLP to SLPA position is something that's important for us to discuss, and that's not on this recommendation. Amherst Town also discussed at the agenda setting yesterday creating the kind of committee that Irv is talking about for long-term planning together side by side, instead of perhaps the committee that we opted not to participate in or continue with in September. So I think there's paths forward. I really was, for the first time, not yelling at my computer last night while I was watching town meeting. I feel like there's understanding that this is not just an Amherst thing. I haven't heard the criticisms of our spending, or I'm hearing now from Amherst Town Council that they're discovering this is not just an Amherst issue, that it is a Western Mass issue, that it is a state issue, that there are many school districts in the same situation we are. There are many towns going for overrides. So I just feel like we're getting to a point where we actually might be able to understand each other and talk to each other in a way that's productive. At BCG, one of the town councilors mentioned an article that was in one of the local blogs, and actually reached out to that author to find out if that author was aware of work that had been done to extensively study efficiencies in our programming, and that person hadn't. So it's been years, and this is just not the way to do it. I get that, we can't just keep kicking the can down the line, but we're making progress. Dr. Z said in September she's moving from a level service budgeting approach to a performance-based. That's going to take years. We're right now in the line item stage. This problem, we didn't create it, but it didn't develop overnight, and this is just no way to solve it. So I'm willing to vote pretty much restoration of all student-facing positions, but I understand the consequences of that for towns might not be manageable. So I don't have a solution, but that's what I think. Yeah.
So I think, can we move into our Shannon's presentation, the
Yeah.
district's presentation, and then we can possibly come back to this as well, to kind of compare where both are, because then I think you'll have a opportunity to vote on, well, we'll go with FSS, we'll go with what the superintendent's team is proposing. And to preface, Shannon is gonna dig deeper into it, but we have monthly meetings with DESI, our regional representatives. Shannon has been in consistent contact with them, and I just would like to reiterate this, and Shannon will dig into it. They would, we have a whole method that's in an agreement that we submitted and is approved, and it would be really great if we just follow the method that's there. And I know that a few years ago, there was this shift to what's happening now, and no one talked about the trajectory to get us back here, but we really need to start talking about that, because inevitably, as we continue to move down the road, we are going to get further and further deeply into the hole. So Shannon, I don't know, but Sarah Beth, can we?
Just really quick, I wanted to add on to something Sarah Beth said at the beginning of the meeting with Project 211 and the it is called the Legislative Local Aid hearing scheduled for March 24th. Sarah Beth touched on Chapter 71, and while I'm not sure how much we would actually benefit in terms of that, but it's not just about Chapter 70, it's also about circuit breaker reimbursement at 100%, transportation reimbursement at 100%, and a major increase to rural school aid. And if we do get all of those things that are in that budget hearing and that is approved, we will see a dramatic difference difference for FY27 that will be helpful. And while I have this opportunity and people are listening, I really want to say that the community, the town council, school committee, parents, staff, whomever needs to go, and when the speaker that is presenting these cuts is talking that we stand in solidarity with them, I will be there. Dr. Z will be there. More communication is coming out from the district. It is so important. If there ever was a time to show up, it is this year. Mars has made significant progress from any other time in the past. And if we're going to make a difference, it's going to be at this state level. So I really urge everyone to go and to listen and to stand up when they are talking, to show that we are there and to support them. So I wanted to say that while I had the opportunity. Moving on to the budget presentation, the two notable changes is that BCG announced a 4% increase for Amherst, and our insurance projection changed from 16% to 14.2% with plan redesign. It was about a $97,000 difference between the two. On this second page in here, this is what was last presented at four towns, with the exception of Amherst percentage at 4% instead of 3.5% on the second blue column. I just want to say I have, as Dr. C said, been in contact with Desi through this whole process. We've been meeting monthly. There have been emails going back and forth. And right after the last four town meetings, and I thought we had an idea of where this was going, I was like, okay, even if the percentages change slightly, I could at least get some language together to them and to see if they would approve of that language of how this is going.
Hold on 1 second. Shannon, what document are you looking at?
Oh, it's on the drive.
Is it called
What's,
31125 RSC? What's the name of it?
Yeah, 31125. Sorry about that.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. So I've been in contact with Desi, and specifically after the last four towns meeting, where I thought we had an idea where this might be going, that wasn't fully using the regional agreement method, but was using this guardrail method, but different than we had in the past. And while the percentages might change, perhaps I could develop this language and get approval from Desi prior to bringing this in before you officially voting it. And I did receive feedback after I had submitted this presentation to Sarah Beth. So there has been changes, and I want to read verbatim what Desi had wrote to me, which is: the regional school committee has no authority to create assessments for FY26 based on a proposed amendment to the regional agreement. That even if town officials agree, there is no guarantee that it would pass at town meeting and that it would not be challenged by voters and taxpayers. And essentially what they're saying is, we should be sticking to our regional agreement. We should not do this alternative method. This is not the method that the people of the towns voted for when the regional agreement came to place. And if we did vote something, who's to say that people of that town won't go to that meeting and challenge it because of that? Desi does not feel comfortable with this. They have received amendments for an overall 4% increase, this guardrail, after the fact, when all of the towns have already voted it, and Desi's like gets it in June or whenever, and they ultimately approve it because the towns have already approved it. But since we've been in constant contact with them now, and they have had the opportunity to deeply express their thoughts, this is not something that they recommend. And the caps that are different for each towns is also not something that they recommend at all. They don't like the language I've provided. They had offered some changes, but quite frankly, I don't like it at all either. And while the math makes sense to these guardrails to us and how I develop this hybrid, it's still arbitrary. And if we cannot go by what's in our regional agreement, then it's time to open up the chapter and amend the original agreement. So I really want to implore all of you that we do not vote anything other than our regional agreement method. that we do not do any guardrails, we do not change the percentages or tweak them in any way, that we use this regional agreement method. And so with that, on the second, or the third page in this slide is another document that it's obsolete. I don't even want to present on it, because it doesn't matter at this point. What I want to go to is the slide that says requires 2/3 vote at the top. And this option has a reduction of 997,359, and with that, it would put Amherst at a 4.03%. It would put Shutesbury at a 6.74%, Leverett at 13.27%, Pelham at 22.08%. And it's an overall budget increase of 5.7%. So the reason why I would want to present this is I really appreciate what the sustainability committee submitted and is thinking for 7%. I absolutely want more funding for the schools. However, I will be the devil's advocate that we need to ensure that the towns are also going to approve this. And I don't want to be in a position where we would be needing to move to a 1/12 budget for FY27 if this is voted down by the towns and not approved. So, and my thought process is this is something I think for sure 2 towns will approve. There's a wild card in there for the other one if they will approve or not. But I thought this was as close to realistic that I could get. And on the next page you can skip, because if the one that says if we use slide 1, it's obsolete. If you go to if we used slide 2, on here, if we had a reduction of 997 instead of 1.5, we're putting back 492,000 into the budget. And what does that mean? So I put together on the last page potential what positions we could add back and what would the reductions look like. While this has not been 100% vetted, it's just an idea that I wanted to present, and then if there was feedback and we had another meeting on Friday, we would take it and come up with something else, unless you all vote the budget tonight, either way. But with this, I was thinking maintaining the current 7 drop 1 middle school schedule. We would only reduce 1 FTE at the middle school as opposed to 5. What that FTE is, I'm not entirely sure yet. But the thought process was for me, which again, this has not been approved by anybody else, but I wanted to put together an example, is if the high school still had some reductions, then I thought that it would only be equitable if the middle school had at least some sort of reduction. And maybe nobody agrees with that. That's fine. It's just an example. And then we would be able to reinstate the 2 high school counselors, reinstating the prep academy and making that whole, and reinstating the world language. And then what's left on this list are the potential reductions that would effectively need to be reduced. And the health insurance change on here has been updated, in case anybody was wondering for that. So that's where I stand at the moment, and I hope that this will contribute to a valuable discussion. Yes, Dr. Z.
I just wanted to say, one of the things that we are going, that I know, I want to frame this correctly, so I'm not misquoted. We need to move towards efficiency, but not in a manner that's going to cause more trauma to the school system. And so maintaining what we have right now with a reduction of 1 FTE, looking at how that FTE does not impact the overall program as well as operation of the school, but looking historically, I had the opportunity to meet with the core teachers and to hear their perspective, as well as over the years how the scale has tilted, where core teachers have been reduced, and programmatic services staff has increased, to the point that there's an imbalance in the scheduling. So I think that moving towards this model would give us this upcoming year to have a deeper dive into what is truly happening within the building, be able to present and walk through very much in my standard fashion, collaboratively, engaging the core, and we're trying not to start a core versus everyone else war here. But we have to understand also the purpose of education. We can't, like, at the end of the day, I'm hearing individuals who are very concerned about counseling services. I'm hearing individuals who are very concerned about making sure that we can meet our IEP needs. And then we also have to meet our core needs. And so when we think about historically what the purpose of education is so that we can make sure our children are prepared and have the foundations. Those foundations start within the core and are supported by all the other programs. So we have to really take a dive into what is happening operationally and how that affects the program. But I think putting some stability this year, working with everyone to probably dive deeper into the work that was already done, to expand on that work, and more so to see how do we address what students truly need at the region is what we're asking for this year, so that we can stabilize the programming and make sure our students academically are being met.
All right. Discussion. Jennifer.
Where is the Bright counselor in this, on these line items? Is that in the two high school counselors? Does this reinstate the?
So when I say there is efficiencies that we need to address, when we look at the title counselor at the high schools, there are like 3 different subtitles that fall on, and one of them is shaking their head. There are like 3-4 different subtitles that sit under that, whether they're Bright, school adjustment, guidance. We need to better align. We need to be clearer on what they do. And so what Shannon has presented here is an overarching conversation of, if we had to reinstate positions, who would be the first to come back in? 2 high school counselors. I can't say that that's Bright from school adjustment, from guidance. I can't tell you who that is or is not. One of the things I do know is that we need to better structure what's happening with the Bright program, because we need to again look at program and student needs. And then there's some other concerns that have come across my desk that I would like to put some structures in place when it comes to that. So I can't say that the 2 high school counselors is the Bright counselor, because, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, can I ask a
Yep.
follow-up? On the original adjustments, additions, reductions page, I didn't see Bright mentioned, and I was trying to take notes when Talib and Michael Sullivan were presenting, but I didn't take a note about Bright, but then people have been giving us public comment about Bright, so I assume that somehow someone knew that the original reductions proposed included reducing from 1 Bright counselor in each school to 1 total. So where was it can someone tell me where it was in the original list of cuts? Was that?
It probably was under the title counselor.
Okay, so it's the 10 to 8, it was the reconfiguration of counseling team?
Yes.
Okay, and so now we're saying, we put those 2 back, but we don't exactly know where
Yes.
yet. Okay, thank you. What is the, next question is, what is the contingency line that's new under budget additions? It's small,
So
but,
that was just because when I did the new target of 997, 359, to make the math, I threw it in there. But I mean, we could put something else back and change that. But that was just last minute to make the
okay,
math.
gotcha, I get it. And then just, I wasn't clear, Dr. Z, what you were saying about the reducing 1 FTE for at arms. It is or isn't going to be a core teacher, or you don't know yet, but it doesn't, if this is passed, the team model would still stay.
Yes.
Okay.
It would still stay, but we need to look at all Unit A positions at the middle school. And so it wouldn't be that FTE would sit and be a core teacher. We're going to actually look at all, and that includes schedules, that includes ratio, student to teacher ratio, workload, and make an adequate decision. Like, what position can we
consolidate, can we condense, and can we work with for the school to function?
Okay, thank you.
Wow. Okay. Well, first, I want to say thank you to Shannon for putting so much more work into this. I know we have had many conversations. I can only imagine the number of conversations and hours that have gone into pulling this all together. Tillman, was your hand up?
Yes.
You're up.
Okay, so the reason I came late was that I was meeting with the select board and the finance committee at the select board hearing this evening in Leverett, so I have relatively fresh information.
13%.
Yep. So don't shoot the messenger. So at the Four Towns meeting, the 6.5% increase for Leverett was presented. That was one of the first slides, and Leverett agreed that this would be painful but feasible for them. And that was the highest increase, together with another town, that was there for any town. And yet they agreed, so the highest percentage increase. The 6.5% is still higher than the overall budget increase that's currently being presented. And so, as I said earlier, this is close to the blue and purple option. So Leverett is in support of supporting the schools. It's very clear. However, and this is before Shannon explained the conversation with Desi, the town, Leverett, has gotten used to the guardrail method, because the guardrail method was designed to provide some level of stability and the ability to plan. And their question is, why are we suddenly getting rid of this? Right? This has been something that we've tried to introduce for those reasons. Those reasons are good. And suddenly we're getting rid of it, and 13% are being discussed, which is neither stability nor the ability to plan for this in any way. And who's to say that we're not going to change the method again when it's convenient some other way, right? That is the perception that, you know, there is a lot of back and forth, and these, I have tried to explain very clearly how we got to those numbers that we are at, but, you know, it's, yeah, I kind of understand, but no, not 13%, right? I mean, for any unit to come into the town budget process and go like, well, you kind of said 6.5, but hey, it's going to be 13. You can imagine what the reaction is, right? And even 6.5 is not an easy conversation within the town. I think there's an understanding that there is an imbalance in the proportions of what happens with the enrollment numbers, but those enrollment numbers are highly variable. In the last 4 years alone, there was over 7% change in terms of what the fraction is that Leverett should pay based on enrollments from within that short time span. So there's a perception that this is not a very stable process, a very stable number, and there's the expectation that this variability will continue and it will go in either direction. So while we are currently a little bit behind, it's not clear that this will continue. And so there's some desire to catch up, but not in 1 year. And there was no plan presented to do this in a reasonable fashion. I think at the very end of the Four Towns meeting, there was a brief, you know, ad hoc conversation about different ways to get there. None of this was formally presented, and so this didn't, you know, again, 13% increase is not feasible. So it pains me to say this, but I will not be able to vote for any budget that has an increase for Leverett that is higher than 6.5% over FY25.
Thank you. I can't imagine that was a fun conversation to have.
People in Leverett are very polite and reasonable, and it was, unpleasant conversation because of the topic, not because of the interaction.
I wasn't suggesting it was the humans. I was suggesting it was the topic. Jennifer?
Thank you, Tim, and I appreciate hearing Leverett's perspective, and I get it, and it is unfair, and it is out of our usual process, and it is out of the ordinary. That being said, I think a lot can be said for the advocacy of our community. I mean, we've seen how parents and staff have come out to advocate to us for a better budget scenario for our schools. And we've had Amherst town councilors, some anyway, asking, why are you picking on Amherst and not on the other towns? Well, I think advocacy is going to be needed by the members of the public, by families and staff and students at the other three towns. I think that the other three towns, Amherst has been taking the brunt of it so far because it's the biggest, but I think that advocacy is going to be needed at the other three towns, and I think that that can be really powerful and can move mountains and change minds and change scenarios, or not. But I think we have to. I think we have to give it a chance. I think we have to give people a chance to do that advocacy at Amherst and the other three towns, and fight for what is important to them.
Irv? Oh, I'm sorry. It's Sarah and then Irv.
Okay, I want to say two things and then ask the superintendent something. I first just wanted to thank all the members of the public who both spoke at the hearing and emailed and left messages, and who've been writing to Senator Comerford and Rep. Dahm and others, raising their voices, advocating for more funds. I certainly hear you. I know we all hear you, and I think the public advocacy is really important. Second, I'm trying to find a balance between recognizing what these cuts mean to our programs and speaking about them in such catastrophic terms that maybe we're driving families away, because I don't want to do that. Because I think that no matter what we end up doing next year, we have just such outstanding educators that no, it wouldn't be the same, but I'm sure it would be very good. And even though we would have lost a lot, I don't want us to give the impression that the school system is just crumbling, even though we really, really resist and don't want to make any of these cuts. So I just put that out there. Second of all, I wanted, or then my question for the superintendent is, because I gather that you are in support of this slide, I call it slide 3, or I guess Shannon did, the one that uses the modified statutory method and has a $997,000 reduction required. I think you're aware of what happens if any of the towns reject the budget or the assessment method, and where that leaves us in terms of, is it going to be June or July? I mean, I have to, excuse me, even though I hope for the best, I want to think about what the worst would be, just so that I'm not making matters worse than how I vote. So if we vote this, and everybody advocates as strongly as we can, and for whatever reason it doesn't pass, and we don't know that until June, and then we have to do something else, is that going to so delay planning and add so much uncertainty to to planning for next year, or knowing who's got a job and what the models are going to be and how people need to redesign curriculum? Is, how big a challenge does that present if a budget that we vote doesn't pass?
It does. I want to start off by saying, from the time I took this seat, and started meeting with Desi and having our four towns meetings, I clearly stated, Shannon stated the last time, that even if we vote an assessment method, even if we send it into them, even if they, just like they gave feedback to what we sent them, we can still end up being forced to abide by our assessment method because they can tell us they're not accepting it for the year. We have an assessment method in our regional agreement. If the towns do not agree with what is in there, they need to come back and look at the regional agreement and assess it and edit it and make the change. That's where it needs to happen. So even if we vote this, we don't vote this, even if we vote and the towns don't abide by it, we still have state mandates that we still have to submit something saying, which we've been doing for the past, however, at least 2-3 years, I think, Shannon. FY this only, we're accepting this. FY that only, we're accepting this. And I've been clear, Shannon's been clear. We are one of the only places that still are doing this, and it really does not reflect well on the region. We have to put something in place. So if what was agreed upon when the regional agreement was crafted and voted is not what matches current practice, then the four towns need to come together and create something that matches current practice. They also need to, and I'm very happy that the community advocated, I wish the community also, and there were some great parents who came to the last couple Four Towns meetings, also came to the Four Towns meetings and go to the town meetings so that Tillman isn't the only one sitting down there holding his head. And I understand they came here to the regional committee, but we are also the ones who now have to vote a budget and then hope that all three of the towns will say yes. When we know we probably will only have two if the other one says yes. So, it really puts us in a predicament. This is the livelihood of adults and educators who have come to us and committed to working with our children here. And I think that, I know that we're not in a great financial situation, but we also maybe need to show up on the 24th to the Ways and Means meeting. And I've been invited to a meeting on the 31st where the secretary is going to be present and the different towns get to talk about the impact to the towns. We need to advocate, and I get it, the towns are strapped and it's hard. But then they also need to step up and advocate just as hard with everyone else to show that education is important and the impact that it's having on them as a town and more so on the children. So I say two things. It's going to be hard if we vote this budget and it pushes back. It's going to be harder if we vote something, we send it up, and Desi rejects it and it doesn't get approved, then we're still stuck. So I would just like us to come to an agreement so that by April 15th, or April 7th, I can notify the union. April 15th, I can notify individuals of the fact that they may or may not have a job, which is not going to be a very easy conversation. So I need to get myself prepared to sit and face educators in an already strapped situation who are leading with their heart and let them know that they may not be able to be with us for the upcoming year.
May I follow up?
Sure.
Yeah, the thing is, if whatever budget we pass doesn't work its way through all the towns for months, so we won't know by April 15th, unless we vote the one that was basically presented at the Four Towns meeting, but then the assessment method is wrong. So we're not going to know by April 15th.
So we would work with the unions as well as others to put some contingencies in place. I think we updated our seniority list. We have different things that we understand. We'll have preliminary conversations. I just would like to reduce impact. And I think reduction of impact would be knowing what the budget is that we're at least working towards. To walk out of here and have to identify 20-something individuals and tell them that they're going, they start applying, and then come back in a couple months and say, hey, no, it's only 4. We've already lost very strong educators. So I do think a decision needs to be made by the committee. I just think that it needs to be one where we're not just dependent on what the towns are going to do, but we know that we also have to submit for approval and review by DESI as well.
Irv?
I want to defer for Shannon first, and then I'll go after Shannon.
So I just wanted to say, Sarah, just to clarify, because I wanted to make sure that you realize with the regional agreement method, with the reduction of 997, you don't have to vote the assessment method. You only have to vote the budget, and it only requires 2/3 votes. So I just wanted to make sure that I said that. And then to Dr. Z's point, which I didn't mention before, part of this, without knowing if our budget's going to be approved way past April 15th, we will need to send RIF notices to all positions that were potentially being reduced, because the deadline is April 15th. The union needs to know a week prior to that. And if they veto the budget and we have to come back, then we're now out of compliance with the union for that contract, for those RIF notices. And I really dislike that, because then people that may not actually lose their job are going to get this notice. And will it make them apply for other jobs? It's a really difficult place, and I think these timelines between the towns, between the contracts, between what needs to be submitted to DESI, that we need to figure out something a little bit better around that. I know we mentioned that at BCG. So I just wanted to make everybody aware.
Thank you, Shannon. How about now, Irv?
All right. So first, I really, really want to say how much I appreciate Shannon's efforts in all of this. I really, really appreciate it. One thing else is that we all need to be aware of that the budget in the state is, when it is passed, takes effect on July 1. And we may not even know until July 1 what that budget actually is and what's going to be contained in that budget. We need to all be aware of that. The other thing is that years ago, when there were budget crises such as this, that's when the four towns got together and came up with the guardrails. It was to prevent these kinds of crises from happening. Obviously, something has changed where the guardrails may no longer apply. And it may mean that something else needs to be put into effect. Whether that can be done before the end of the year or before the notices need to get out is a whole other issue. But we need to be aware that this is going to be a moving target with the towns coming to an agreement, and we may find ourselves in the position where there isn't a 2/3 majority. And that will put us into a whole other crisis. So I guess, it's a sense of frustration that I have that we cannot really fully guarantee that which we vote will become reality in relationship to the towns. So the bottom line is that which we do vote is all going to be on us, and we then have to await the decisions of the four towns, and that's going to be an uncomfortable wait.
Shannon?
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm allowed to keep chiming in, but
Yes,
I do.
absolutely.
Okay. I do want to also say that in this position, I fully support taking this risk and getting 2/3 vote. I 100% support it. If we come to a point where that's not approved, I will do everything that I have to do in this job to pass something, to get something else together as quickly. I will work hard for you. If it comes to a point, if it comes to a point where we need to do this 1/12 budget, July, our teachers are not working at that point, so it's not as detrimental right away. August, it starts to get difficult, and September, I don't know how we would manage that. But so I do want to just point that out. I don't really know what the 1/12 budget process looks like. I remember last year starting to get emails about it, and I'm sure there will be emails this year that come out, and I will attend those trainings and be prepared ahead of time if that is something that does end up happening. But I just want you all to know that I will work hard and we will figure it out, and I 100% support the risk.
Thank you, Shannon. Deb.
I want to read some numbers first. I sent a packet to town council last week, Amherst Town Council, and it has some statistics in it. And I'm just going to read them because numbers speak to me. So at the region, our enrollment is expected to decline by 28 students, and that's 2.3%. The staffing and the one that we were looking at before, the 3.5% from Amherst, and it doesn't change much, the extra 0.5%, sadly, is 6.3%. So that's 2.5 times. So we're reducing staff by 2.5 times the rate that students are declining. And as generous as these increases are, and again, I'm talking about my town, their increase of 3.5% of $659,000 covers our increases of transportation from FY29 plus the increases for other insurance benefits, our employees, and that's the end of it. So nothing having to do with payroll and nothing having to do with any of the other increases. I can see reining in special education because we have to rein in everything. I get that. I get you have to live within your means. But I can't make these numbers add up in my mind. And so I understand how important it is to the people who are professionals, and we are elected officials, we're just regular everyday people, to get to a statutory method, but this is not the year to do it. It's the year where we have incredible budget cuts. We have this moving target between, it frustrates me no end that we constantly have this conversation about statutory versus not statutory and who's paying what percentage. And then what percentages people can pay and what percentage increases towns can pay. I don't even hear any discussion at 4 towns about what the needs of our students are besides what our superintendent brings forward. And whether or not we can as a community afford it. So I said this last year, but I'm gonna say it this year. It's not the time to make sure that the formula is executed. Not in my mind, not when we're looking at these kinds of cuts, not when we don't have a solution. So I said this the last time I talked about the budget. This isn't gonna change. Amherst Town has said they are a 3 to 4% district. We are not a 3 to 4% district. I mean, Amherst Town has said it's a 3 to 4% increase town. This district is not a 3 to 4% increase district. And I see how once we get to statutory, then these generous increases by other towns that match the de facto increases of our expenses make sense. But until we're there, and with these kinds of cuts and these kinds of crazy numbers, I can't see going to statutory. There's just too many things we're trying to optimize. We're trying to optimize efficiencies. We're trying to optimize, I guess I'm gonna stop that sentence, but I do want to circle back to a couple of other points. I believe, I've dug into Mass General Law, I believe that the reason that, I believe the statutory method makes sense because it's based on wealth, relative wealth of communities. And the actual amount that we're talking about is a relatively small amount. So it's $16 million is like just divided up the way the state says we divide it up. It's the extra $9 or $10 million that we're trying to decide, and that's, I know, that's a lot of money, what percentage, who pays of what. So, what am I saying? I'm saying that, to me, the reason that it takes 4 towns to vote the non-statutory method is because there's towns that are disadvantaged by doing that. And Amherst says they're one of them. I maintain it's more Shutesbury than anybody. But if we're all willing to agree on it, then that's on us. And that's our community, and we're elected to serve it. And I can go with the guardrails method because that's what we've been doing until now. And I get that we need to get there. But I don't know what process. We can't do it all at once. And I'm not going to do it in a way that makes no sense when we're going to be here next year with the same problems. So, yeah, they're magically hitting statutory, sucking it up and hitting statutory this year does not solve the problem. And I do believe, I said this last year, so maybe I'm just naive or optimistic, but I do believe there's change. I do believe there's bills. I do believe there's movement. I do believe that there's willingness at my town to come together and have a realistic discussion. I've had conversations with town councilors who do not realize what's built into the regional budget. So they do not realize that, unlike other sectors of my town, the region is paying retiree costs, and they're retiree costs from a time when our population was higher. So we have higher. There's been no discussion about how to help us downsize that cost. It just keeps going up. So we're paying all the Amherst Town, and I've just dug into Amherst Town budget. I'm not picking on them, but the charter school sending costs come out of the town's budget. It's a line on the town that says other appropriations or unappropriated uses or whatever. That is there. It's not in the school's budget. That is in the town side. The town pays that cost. The sending cost for charter school tuitions does not come out of the elementary school budget. And I don't think it comes out of the elementary school budgets in any of the other towns either, but it comes out of our budget. So there's just gross inequities of the budgeting process and who gets what percentage. And I just don't think now's the time to say, oh, well, we're just gonna make it work this year by cutting all these people and by putting forward a budget that's gonna fail. I just think the compromise solution is doing damage control, restoring as many teachers, student-facing positions as we can manage, and committing yet again to a year of looking deeply and looking for solutions. There's towns that create special education stabilization funds. You know, right now, the Amherst School District, there's 200. If you see in this line, it's actually not a reduction. The $250,000. Oh no, that's the other budget. if you look at the Amherst school budget, there's a reduction in it. That's $250,000. That's not a cut. That's students whose out-of-district placements are now becoming the financial responsibility of this district as opposed to the Amherst school district. So there's lots of ways in which, that I think if people are willing to talk, and I think they are, we can get there, and it's not by doing this.
Thanks, Deb. Tillman?
Sorry.
Thanks. So the superintendent proposes a 5.7 increase to the overall budget, and Leverett is willing to pay 6.5% more, which is more than what is requested on average. So I just want to make sure that I want to note that I would strongly disagree with any narrative that makes it look like Leverett is the cause for any cuts. A similar situation as for Leverett applies to another town in the region, and only because I happen to speak first doesn't mean that people should blame Leverett. I also want to make sure that people understand how town meeting works in Leverett. Every single budget item gets voted individually by the voters in town. Before any vote is taken, there's a question to the Finance Committee if they support the proposed item. The Finance Committee has made it very clear that they will support an increase of the regional school line item up to 6.5%. If they say no for any higher increases that are proposed, I cannot see how any advocacy in the town would overcome that obstacle. Leverett is willing to get closer to the regional agreement, the statutory method, but we need a plan with reasonable increases. I'm in agreement with Deb that this year is not the year where we just drop this on the towns. There is a solution to get to the 5.7% increase that the superintendent proposes, and that is 6.5% increase for Pelham, Leverett, and Shutesbury, and 5 point something, I can't calculate that quickly, for Amherst. It's not perfect, it's not the statutory method exactly, but it gets the three towns that are out of whack. Yeah, I don't want to say whack. Out of equilibrium closer to the statutory method, and it limits the overall increase so that the towns can handle these adjustments. And so I want to be clear that there is a feasible way forward that uses the methods that we had previously, which have the guardrails, and I understand the reservations that we have with DESI, but we can't have a more than 5% increase to the overall budget and then do that correction in the same year. Do it next year when all the bills have passed that we hope for. Some towns may have a decrease, and maybe that's the right time to do it, but it's not this year. But I want to be really, really clear that the 5.7% is achievable within the means of all the four towns.
Thank you, Tillman. Bridget.
So first, yeah, I really appreciate what Tillman said. I think that's something to think about. What was really coming to me after sitting through the budget hearing last week, and then the next night, or maybe, yeah, the very next night, we had the Amherst budget hearing. So by the end, it was over 7 hours of people telling us how devastating it would be for the schools. And I literally had to just keep wiping tears by the end of the meeting. And I went home and I thought about it because I experience people telling me bad news all the time, and things that aren't going well. But I think what really hit me is the residual trauma we're putting some of our most cherished community members through. They don't feel valued. It's an elementary school example, but I remember the technology teacher my son had at Fort River, and when he was a teacher there, his number was on the chopping block, and then everyone came out and said, hey, this would be horrible. Don't forget all the amazing things Dr. T or Mr. T does and how amazing he is for our community and our students. And we pulled back and did it. But this dance, I think it really puts people we should care about more in such an unfortunate position. So Deb cares about the numbers, and thank God, right? And Tillman's really good with them, and I think together we can come to something, but I'm really thinking about the people. And so I'm gonna make one suggestion for the process next year. And I think that that process is that the budget hearing needs to be held in conjunction with the Four Towns meeting. So we're all hearing the same information together. And then the second thing that I wanted to say is I appreciate, like, Shannon's done a ton of work, and this is a really neat idea. But what I'm hearing already is we can't get there because 2/3 is really 3/4, because we've got 4 towns. And right now, I know we've only got half. So we need a different solution. And what I'm thinking is all 4 towns voted. To pass an assessment method, all 4 towns have to vote for it. That's the law, right? So all 4 towns voted the guardrails previously. So I'd like to see a 6% budget for all the towns and what that puts us at when we come back.
Dr. Z?
I was checking my calendar, and I think it's this Thursday we actually have our meeting with our DESE regional reps. And since the FSS has suggestions, I thought it would be really great if you guys are available that we can forward over, and I'll let them know. Maybe you can pose some of these questions. So it's just not me, Shannon, and the chair hearing.
Got it.
We're tired of the Amherst Pelham regional one-year memos, and we're like, I think that some of the questions and concerns, so I don't know if you're open to that, the subcommittee, financial sustainability subcommittee. But coming in, especially since you took on the mantle of revenue and what it looks like, I think having that understanding of what we're hearing about how we operate differently and asking some of these questions would be open. So again, full transparency, I can forward over the invite to the FSS, that's the committee, right? Yes. FSS committee, so that you guys can come out and probably ask some of the questions around the same thing with the regional agreement with the assessment methods. And Shannon will welcome any support as we go to answer the questions in those in that email.
Tell me the date again.
I think we have to confirm it.
Yeah. I'll confirm with them and send it.
Shannon, did you have a?
Yes, I just want to say to Bridget and Tillman's point, if we do vote a budget that is with guardrails, from my understanding with DESE, it needs to be equal guardrails for all 4 towns, that we cannot cap the towns differently. So I just want everyone to be on the same page for that.
You have a,
Just one quick comment.
Yep.
The guardrail would be 6.5% for all towns. But 3 out of the 4 towns would only hit the guardrail.
2.
Right. I see what you're saying.
Interesting.
Jennifer.
I've been on an emotional roller coaster for the past 15 minutes or so. So if I look at my spreadsheet, I think Tillman is correct in that if Pelham, Leverett, and Shutesbury do a 6.5% increase, and Amherst does a 5.6% increase, that gets us to a 5.7, 5.8% budget-ish. But so Amherst would hate that, but that's not the point. So, but I thought, I'm sure Shannon started by saying we shouldn't do anything other than the regional agreement because DESE won't approve it, or we think DESE won't approve it. But now I'm hearing if we do something other than the regional agreement, it has to be sort of equal guardrails, like not different for every town, and that maybe could work. I mean, we have. I attended the BCG, and I heard one town councilor, so, Amherst has gone up to 4%. I thought I heard one town councilor talk about going up to 5%, and I thought she said 5.5 is a stretch, but maybe 5%. So, it seems like there's some movement with Amherst. So could we push them as high as 5.6%? I don't know. This is why I'm saying I've been on an emotional roller coaster. I guess one of the, so Shannon was very clear that she strongly suggests the budget that requires a 2/3 vote. Megan, could you put up that page, I think it's page 4 that says requires 2/3 vote? Yeah. So I hear Shannon saying she strongly recommends this. Dr. Z, for where you're at, is that aligned with you? Are you strongly suggesting this?
Yes. And I'm going to say yes because when I tell you that just like the calendars, this budget process has been a roller coaster, and between Shannon, Kate, and the leadership have run every possible scenario. This is the best one for the region.
Okay, I hear that. I hear that the bottom line number is the best one for the region,
Right.
but how we split the pie from the 4 towns.
I could care less how the pie is. I just need us to get to that 5.7%.
Yeah. Okay. So you feel strongly about the 5.7%. I get that. Shannon, are you saying that like what you feel most strongly about is the 5.7%, or I thought what you said was we should take the risk of the 2/3 vote.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I feel strongly using the regional agreement method. I would love if we could have more than 5.7 and have 7%. But what I'm saying is I think we should use the regional agreement. And I just want clarity of what Desi said. When I presented at 4 towns and there was different caps for each of the towns, that is a total no-go.
Gotcha.
But we have had approval where we used an overall budget increase that was the same for each of the towns, and that one cap is the same, and that was approved. So if we do that, it needs to be equal, which is something that the towns have all said they don't want to do that anymore. And so I say, okay, you don't want to do that, then let's go with what's in the regional agreement and let's hold you to it.
And what I started speaking with, which was 6.5% increase for Pelham, Leverett, and Shutesbury, and 5.6% increase for Amherst, which was Tillman's suggestion. Is that within the? Do you think that would fly with Desi?
Yes, if we had a cap of, if say it was 6.5% for
Yeah.
all of the districts, but when I put in the reduction, Amherst doesn't hit that
Doesn't hit the cap.
and it ends up at 5 point whatever,
Yeah.
then yes, I think that would be okay.
Okay. Thank you.
William.
So I'm not a numbers person or a budget person, so I apologize. And other people here are, so maybe they can help me out here. I remember hearing in a 4 towns meeting that Amherst was reaching the top of what they're allowed to charge for taxes, property taxes, and the other towns weren't. Do we know where the towns lie in that? So like Pelham, it scares me because Pelham has to pay, behind me 22% more. But I would like to know, as a town person, if I lived in Amherst versus in Pelham, what would I be paying towards my taxes? Is that kind of, so like Amherst doesn't have room for growth, is what they're saying, because they already have met that top of the line. Where is Pelham, Shutesbury, and Leverett in that? And so, like, I know that budget can't, I know that Pelham can't do a 22% increase within their current structure, but is there enough growth possibility for them to push the taxes up to where Sarah Bess and I could help fund some of that through paying increased property taxes? That, I guess, is my question. Does anyone know that here?
I don't know what the limits are.
I know that
You need to
Shutesbury
know
hasn't
that.
hit its limit,
Okay.
but I don't know what Pelham has hit. I think they have not hit their limit, but I don't know how much ceiling they have. And then Leverett, do you know if you've hit your ceiling?
No, I don't know the details of the town finances.
And then I guess Jennifer had mentioned where the Bright piece came in. If I look in the regional draft on page like 82, it has it under student services, and there was a $24,000 savings for the Bright staff, and so that's when I had asked that question at the last meeting, like how was that going to come about? And then our superintendent suggested how that was coming about. I did notice that there was a reduction. It was saying we had 10 counselors now in the high school. They were reducing it to 8. So in this new budget that is being presented tonight, they said we would increase the counselors by 2. So it looks like to me then the counseling department would be whole again, because it was 10, they were reducing it to 8, they're adding 2, so they would be kept whole. I don't know. And then how do the choice seats, is it this the last year that the towns get to automatically send their kids? And are we opening up any other choice seats that could affect this budget, or are we not opening up any choice seats?
I have a call with the union. We're 20. Which
We're
union?
26.
Okay, 28. Superintendent to clarify that, because I have been contacted by parents around that, and I also know that last year the region did not open any choice seats for high school or middle school. I'll be discussing that with principals this year. But I don't. I was at a loss as to why Leverett parents were asking me about students coming to the middle school, so I just need to, yes.
Tillman?
I think they're not Leverett parents, but parents who live outside Leverett who are currently choicing into Leverett.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I think that was phasing out, but I can't remember
So,
if it's the current fourth graders or if
So
it was the current
I can
fifth
have some
graders.
clarity once I get the backstory and meet with Superintendent Cleveland and get that to you.
Okay. Is there any way that we could, maybe I need to do that on my own research, but know where the towns lie and what their tax revenue is, where there could be growth? So like if we did push, I'm not saying I want to push this for Pelham because I'm a Pelham person, but if we did push 22% increase, like could that be attainable through them raising their taxes within not having to pass a Prop 2.5, I guess is my question.
very limited understanding of how town finances work is that they can't change that without some sort of town agreement override.
Yep, true.
Okay, but we can also look into our towns and see what they have to say. But even then, I don't know, like, that would solve this problem right now. So, okay, Erd, you're up.
Yeah, you're right, Sarah. That's because years ago the state passed 2.5, which Proposition 2.5, which means budgets in any town can only go up by 2.5% every year. If they go beyond that, they have to ask their citizens for an override. A couple of other things is that if we come up and use Tillman's, which I think is a good ideal, of 5.7%, or whatever percent we use, we must make sure that that becomes our base for going forward. In other words, our base becomes that, so that the next year we start from that base and not from some other base. This is not a gift. This is our base, and I hope people understand what I'm saying. We need to make sure that is our base going forward. The other thing is that, Shannon and others, and Shannon said it and others understand, that most towns, and the 4 towns have traditionally considered the statutory method to not be workable or feasible. In fact, some consider it to be onerous. So we need to keep that in mind, and that if we're willing to take that risk and ask the towns for that, be mindful that that is something that has not been palatable in the past.
Sarah.
So we've heard that our Leverett representative is very pessimistic about his town's willingness to rise to 13.27 increase. And it sounds like Pelham, at least William thinks Pelham is unlikely to go for 22. I wonder, okay, I wonder if Shutesbury has any. I mean, that increase, that 6.74, I think is compared to when we last talked at 4 towns to 5.61. Do you have any, I mean, I know we're just seeing this, so do you have any? Okay,
No,
okay.
I don't have any,
Insight.
I think that they might be willing to go over 5.6, but I can't say how high they would go over that amount. I think the other issue is that by doing a flat 6.5, we are further deepening the gulf that is the allocation method. It is, Shutesbury owes less, Pelham and Leverett owe more, Pelham owes a lot more, and Amherst owes less. And every time we cap it, we make that worse.
Right.
We make it worse every single time. And that's what's frustrating Shutesbury right now. It's not so much the amount, it's the allocation method is getting further and further away from what they perceive as the agreed statutory method. And so, that's all I can
Okay,
really,
thank you.
yeah,
Then
that's-
if I can just follow up, it would seem like our best option, I'm not saying we should vote tonight. I mean, I can't imagine, even though I understand the desire to return to the modified statutory method, the regional agreement, I think plopping this on our towns would just be a shock. I mean, because we didn't talk about anything like this at our Four Towns meeting. And I understand the information from Desi is new, and it's unfortunate, but it would just seem to, I mean, I just can't imagine that it would work, even though advocacy, yes, is going to be necessary no matter what. So I would think at this point our best option is the slide requires 2/3 vote, the cuts of 997,359, but with this cap of 6.5, and hope that Desi will let it go. And then I understand that it just keeps the discrepancy, it persists, and I just don't know what we do about it. I mean, to be clear, everybody would be fine with the assessments with the regional method if the pie were small enough, right? If the pie were small enough, then everybody's piece would be something they could pay for, but we don't want to have to go there.
Tillman?
So I politely disagree with the assertion that we're deepening the gulf. Those towns, so as long as at least one town that pays less with the guardrail method, the towns that hit the cap pay more than the other town and therefore are moving towards in the right direction. They're not there, but they're going in that direction. So if you were to do this, and next year would be kind of the same, Shutesbury would be much closer to being an statutory method, and then eventually Leverett, and then eventually Pelham. I just want to say that if we're gambling and we're trying the 2/3 vote and say, oh, we're just going to go statutory and see what happens, good luck. First of all, I don't think this is a way to operate as a region and be collegial among four towns, but it's a possibility. I can be easily outvoted. I acknowledge that. But if then Leverett holds the line and says 6.5 no matter what, that would mean a significant cut to the overall region, because then we would need to apply the formula. We would limit the increase for Leverett to 6.5, and based on my calculation, which might be wrong, the budget would go up by 2.8, not by 5.4.
Yeah.
And so I just want to acknowledge that that's a gamble. Now, if you put enough pressure on Leverett, they might relent, but again, I don't think this is the way to run a region. And so I love everything you've said, Shannon, but I do not agree that this is a good gamble.
So in all full transparency, I just want to say that I know we're going to continue going around, but I would like for myself and my team to have some direction so that when we leave here, and hopefully before 10 p.m., we would have a direction as to what we need to do to come back before the regional committee in the next couple days, because we have to present a budget to 4 towns within a time frame. So I would like to ask for some guidance, please.
Do you have a follow-up?
I would like to make a motion.
Oh boy, okay, hold on.
I move that the regional school committee, I'm going to say direct, but I mean this in the politest of way, direct the superintendent to prepare a budget that has, for FY26, that has a total increase of 5.7%, and that applies a guardrail, the guardrail method, with a cap of 6.5%.
6.5? Okay. Direct the superintendent to prepare a budget with a total increase of 5.7% and applies a guardrails of 6.5%. Okay.
Second.
Was that you, Jennifer? Okay. Discussion. Yep.
I could do it in 5 minutes and give it to you, or do you want to wait till Friday?
I want to wait till Friday because then they're going to continue to discuss and I want to run it over with you.
Okay. So I already have Anna, William, Deb, and Jennifer on the list before said motion was made. So we'll use this as discussion. Anna, do you have about the motion?
So the total budget will end up being a 5.7% increase. And that will be whatever Amherst could afford if all of the other towns only contribute 6.5%. So their percent will be whatever it is that will get us to the 5.7. And everybody else will cap out at 6.5. Okay.
So, I wanted to ask Shannon, before this is to me part of this discussion, but how, I know I trust you, Shannon, and I really respect all the work you've put into this and the professionalism you've done. You seem very passionate that the statutory method, and we would be able to get to the 2/3. I guess, could you explain how you feel like we would get there for the 3 towns, or the 2 towns? I guess it'd be 3 towns, 3 out of the 4?
Leverett was the wild card, and I didn't know what Tillman was going to say until this meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Deb?
I have a question for Shannon. With the readjustment of the insurance, how much did that knock off the total deficit?
97,000.
Say it, 97,000?
Yep, 97.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Wow. I appreciate the motion because I feel like we're all sort of agreed about the 5.7% budget. It's just how to split up the pie. And we have to build that into I think we have to build that into the motion, so that's why we have to figure out how to split up the pie. So the way I see it, whether we use the regional agreement method to split up the pie or the 6.5% cap method, there's risks either way. With the regional agreement method, the risk is that we only get 2 out of the 4 towns to agree, or that we don't get 3 out of the 4 towns. We only need 3 out of the 4 towns to go the regional assessment method, the one with the double digits for 2 of the towns. The risk is that we don't get 3 of the 4 towns. And let's just put all our cards on the table. Shannon, you earlier you said you thought 2 of the towns would agree, and then there was one with the wild card. Can we just say, are you saying that you thought that Amherst and Shutesbury would agree and Leverett was the wild card? And so, but now we probably know that Leverett's not a wild card because we've heard from Tillman. And we kind of probably know that Pelham's not going to chip in 22%. So now I feel like that is less feasible, less likely to happen. So the risk with the 6.5% cap method is that one of the 4 towns doesn't agree, because we need all 4 towns to agree on the assessment method and the total amount. I know you made the motion, and Shannon's gonna do the calculations, but according to my quick calculations, if Pelham, Leverett, and Shrewsbury are at 6.5%, Amherst would need to be at 5.55%. So can we push, would they be willing? I don't know. It would take a lot of pushing. It would take a lot of advocacy. It would, they're gonna go through a lot at the town council level. Anyway, I'm in favor of the motion. Thank you.
Irv?
Thank you, Tillman. I'm definitely in favor of this motion. I think it's an incredible compromise motion, and it stands the most chance of being accepted by all 4 towns. And so I really appreciate you bringing it forward, Tillman, and I will vote for it.
Deb?
So using the 97,000, I think that puts Amherst closer to 5%. So I think.
What do you mean? Can I ask, what do you mean? The 97, it's already
So I-
incorporated.
It's already incorporated. Okay. The numbers that I ran, which is based on level services and other calculations from before, I'm still looking at a 5% increase for Amherst.
The health insurance reduction line is already reflecting that.
Yeah.
It used to be 45, and now it's,
Yeah.
she already
Yeah.
reflected it.
Yeah. Okay.
Anna?
Well, my hand's not up. I hope it's not.
So if Amherst has a 5.5, so what I think we would need to show then is what the budget would look like if Amherst were contributing 5.55% increase, and then what the other towns would owe that would be well over their 6.5% increase, so that when they get capped at 6.5, the total budget is 5.7. So what we can't start with is a 5.7% increase and figure out how the percentages work out. What we need to figure out is what percentage Amherst would pay to get a budget that increased by 5.7% total if then all of the other towns were capped. It's a very complicated calculus. I think Shannon understands what I'm saying. But we need the budget that does not cap it in order to show what happens if you don't cap it, and then if you cap it, then you end up at that 5.7% budget.
Isn't that the regional agreement?
No, because what we're talking about is increasing the Amherst budget here to 5.55.
Yes.
And then we would need to calculate what that means for all of these others, which is gonna be then blown up, right? So this is gonna be like 26, and this is gonna be 15, and this is gonna be like 8 or whatever. And then what that total amount is, then you cap it at 6.5 to come up with the new budget. And so in order to show DESI that everyone is being capped at 6.5% and Amherst is actually allocated the 5.55%, we have to make those full adjustments before we just raise Amherst up to 5.5. Does that make sense?
And I just want to say that when I put all 4 towns at 6.5% for the cap, and I put in the reduction of 997,000, Amherst only has to. What that does to Amherst is keeps them at 4.03%, and all of the other towns at 6.5%, and it's only an overall budget increase of 4.49. So the way that math, what Anna's saying, you can't work, say we want overall 5.7, and have this cap like, actually, hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
Can I suggest that we trust our
Yes.
budget
That was
person
going-
to take a few hours
Not
to
now,
think about?
Shannon.
Call to order.
No. Call the question.
Yeah, call the question.
No, then we have to vote. Don't do that.
No.
Vote on your motion.
No, if you call the question, you
If I
have
call
to vote on
Actually,
calling
I
the
just want to
question.
say,
On your motion.
No, if you call the question, you have to vote on calling the question, and then you vote on the
Alright.
question.
Okay, sorry.
Are you withdrawing your?
Yes,
thought?
I will try.
Okay.
Sorry.
if everyone's capped at 6.5%, Amherst without any reductions in that first blue column is at 8.23, which means Amherst would also be capped at 6.5%, and it would be a reduction of 812,000.
Wait, Shannon, why
We'll
don't
deal
you?
with it tomorrow, Shannon. We'll finish it tomorrow. We'll work on
Yes.
it tomorrow.
Perfect. Okay,
Question.
Deb, question.
The 5.7%, that's the increase of the total budget, or that's the increase of the assessments? Shannon?
Assessments. Total town assessment.
Total town assessments.
Oh, wait.
Because
Oh,
that,
that's a good
I
question.
guess I've been assuming it
you're
was
right.
different.
You're right.
Okay.
It's the budget.
No, it's the assessments, it's not the total.
It's increase in assessments.
Okay.
Okay.
And so what does that translate to in terms of the increase in the budget?
4.6.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
right, it's
so
right there.
I think we need to let our business professional.
Yeah.
But the motion is incorrect then.
Oh, we need to just,
So,
okay. I still
can-
think we should let our, whatever our motion is, let our business professional
I
math
know,
it
but
and
but
bring it
with
back.
the point,
Yeah.
can I
Yeah.
make an amendment to say that I would like to see a 4.61% increase to the total budget, not 5.7.
Yeah.
That will then, that increase will cause an assessment increase of 5.7%.
Yeah.
That then will lead to the things that you said, so I apologize for overseeing.
It's okay.
Are you-
Jennifer, you second?
Yes,
We're good?
I second
Okay.
or agrees.
Okay, so now,
4.61, this is up here
I'm not voting for this.
It's right there.
at the,
We're not voting for the budget. We're voting for
okay,
it to be
so the motion is to do, the RSE very politely directs the superintendent to prepare a budget with a total increase of 4.61% and applies guardrails with 6.5%.
Yes.
Okay. Final further discussion. Excellent.
Hey, could you repeat that? Sorry. Sorry.
The-
No, I can't, but yeah. Motion
The
is,
motion is to direct the superintendent to prepare a total increase of 4.61 to the total budget and applies guardrails of 6.5%.
with an assessment
I don't think
increase
that's
of
possible.
5.7.
Can you just
Okay,
take out
but-
the percentage increase and just do a cap for this amendment? Just because the numbers are never going to add up, because then when I do that cap, that 4.61, it's not the same. So if you could just
Okay.
say what the cap number is
No,
and not
no,
the
no, no.
increase total.
I really mean what I said.
No.
I think
I can know what I mean. Maybe it's wrong, but I know what
But I'm telling you, it's not possible to create that budget.
Pause.
It's not
This
possible.
is, we are asking her to create this. It is not the final budget that is necessarily going to be voted on Friday. Like, this is our ask to have Shannon come back with this,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Somehow Shannon's saying she can't. Let's hear it. Can we hear what she has to say?
Yes, I just don't want to get into the arguments of like, us
Okay.
trying to figure it out.
Okay.
What do you got, Shannon?
6.5, it will not come out as.
Yeah, so if there's a cap at 6.5%, all four towns will hit that 6.5%.
How is this possible? Then the time.
I can tell you on Friday, but because we're not going to put a reduction in that first blue column. We're going to put the reduction in the guardrail column, and so when you do that, that there is the regional method says that Amherst's percent increase is 8.23%. Which is
But I don't quite understand, but could your motion be to create a budget that has a 5.7% increase in the assessment?
Sure.
Would that work, Shannon? If we say a 5.7% increase in the total assessment with guardrails of 6.5%?
Can we just be, can I just go with my team and present a budget that has 6.5% guardrails in place that allows us to not go below 4.61% of our overall increase. Something like that.
That's
Can-
the
can-
motion, yes.
There you go. I amended it.
I don't think, okay.
Okay.
So,
Tell me, can you
are we
repeat that?
ready? The motion right now is to direct the superintendent to prepare a budget with a total increase of 4.61
No,
Yes.
no less than 4.
with, and applies the guardrails of 6.5%. Okay. Deb,
Can't we just do the percentages of the towns?
No.
Why? 5.61, 6.5, 6.5, and 5.5.
Because Desi says we cannot have a budget that has different guardrails
No.
for different towns.
That has the same guardrails. Amherst doesn't
It
hit it.
does not, Amherst, but
Doesn't hit the guardrails.
okay,
have to
this
create a
is just
budget.
about asking what we would like Shannon to come back with. I feel like, given this conversation, Shannon has a good idea of what we are looking for.
Okay.
And I think we can trust the central office to interpret us in a way that we can work with on Friday.
yes. I
So
don't think we have to vote. I don't think we have to vote.
there is a motion on the table and we have to do something with it.
I would like to,
So,
I move to table the motion.
Oh, for,
okay, so
I don't think we need to vote. We just
if you
need to get a new
table the motion, we have to vote on tabling the motion,
The motion to table needs a second.
and it has to be seconded. And I think it's like later in the same meeting or something.
I don't
Yes,
hear a
so-
second.
It hasn't been seconded.
Okay, perfect.
Hasn't been seconded.
Okay, so we have our motion. We're gonna, okay. Irv, final comment. Oh, you're down. Okay, good. Jennifer, how do you
Yes.
vote?
I vote yes.
Tillman,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Anna.
No, I don't even understand. Not the motion that was proposed, no.
Okay. William,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Irv,
Yes.
and Sarah, yes. So we are 8 to 1 to 0. I mean 0, and Anna is a no.
Do
Okay.
what she can instead of what she was asked.
Okay. I think that's enough budget discussion. We can come back. Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee.
I feel like we covered most of this already. So I think to catch Dr. Z up to speed, it has come to our attention that a midterm review is recommended for the superintendent. The midterm review, mid-year evaluation. The mid-year evaluation runs quite differently from the annual evaluation. The mid-year evaluation is simply the superintendent presents your progress on the goals that you have set forth, and then we have a brief discussion. We would like a brief presentation of your progress on your goals, maybe on the order of 15 minutes, something that could be done as part of like the superintendent update. And then we would suggest sooner rather than later because the annual evaluation will be coming up very shortly after that. But we were wondering if it's possible, and it seems like next week or the next meeting is gonna be jam-packed and maybe not the best time to do it. But maybe the first one in April would be, but I don't know Dr. Z, I don't know if you have any time to prepare this, and so is that unrealistic to prepare it for the first meeting in April, and then we would need to invite all of the relevant school committees?
Yeah, all three districts, so you only could have to present one time and we could all comment at once.
Okay.
But something small and short within your.
Not, we don't want you to go crazy, and take up all of your time.
Superintendent update.
Yeah.
Just throw the goals into your superintendent update so we can have a conversation.
No, okay.
We also need, so we need to populate the committee. We currently have 2. Well, so currently, the way the subcommittee is that it is a subcommittee of the region, and it is in the policy preferable that all towns or all school committees are represented. So I would like to ask a member of Amherst to volunteer to be part of this subcommittee. Perfect, Sarah. Yay. You are officially blessed to be on that committee. I will update the subcommittee.
Might I suggest that the subcommittee communicate with Dr. Z about your request offline, because everyone's tired and it's late, and just so that everyone's clear as to what you're expecting.
Perfect. Okay. Our next 2 items have been postponed. We have a gift. Jennifer.
I move that the Regional School Committee accept the following gifts from Stephen Burns and Sarah Goff, number 662, to support Anna Burns Memorial Scholarship for $5,000. From Florence Bank, number 259492, to support Florence Bank Scholarship, $500. From Jones Properties, LP, number 44069, to support Gerald L. Jones Scholarship for $500. From Shirley Musumechi, National Services, check 944202755, to support Leo P. Vigneault Memorial Scholarship, $500, for a grand total of $6,500.
Second. Okay. Jennifer.
Yes.
Tillman.
Yes.
Bridget.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Anna.
Yes.
William.
Yes.
Deb.
Yes.
Irv.
Yes.
And Sarah Beth, yes. Thank you all very much for these super generous donations. They're very much appreciated. Oh boy. Jennifer, was your hand?
Yeah, I move we adjourn.
Second.
All right. Jennifer.
Yeah. Yes.
Tillman.
Yes.
Bridget.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Anna.
Yes.
William.
Yes.
Deb.
Yes.
Irv.
Yes.
And Sarah Beth, yes. We are adjourned.
And we are definitely meeting on
We
Friday
are
then.
definitely meeting on Friday.
Is it here
Yes.
again? Okay.
At 5:30.
What time is the thing?